Y'all better use a condom, cause I'm coming for that ass.
Yo, who the fuck is MattCMG?
Hey paisanos, it me, MattCMG, and welcome back to the anime series, the unofficial name of the official series where I chronicle my anime viewing journey. Every few series I watch, I'll make a video like this with my brief thoughts after a first viewing, and we do a little bit of funnies. Brief thoughts, motherfucker, look at the length of this video. Now today's episode has been a long time coming. I teased it all the way back in the Trigger video, which was over a year ago. I've been hinting at it in my streams over at twitch.tv/MattCMGYT, and I have just been itching to do this video, so let's finally talk about shonen. Shonen is the Japanese word for young boy, and due to the vast amount of series that are about young men and young boys in Japan, it's become kind of its own genre, with weekly Shonen Jump aggregating manga for this exact audience for over 5 decades. There are all kinds of shonen series throughout history that we could talk about today, right? Back in the day, you had things like Dragon Ball, JoJo's, which is still technically going, and Fist of the North Star. Today we have stuff like My Hero Academia and Demon Slayer. But aside from Dragon Ball, there are no manga that are as influential to the medium as the big three: One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. These 3 series are often lumped together because they were all coming out around the same time and essentially became the poster boys for Weekly Shonen Jump due to their immense popularity, with each of them landing on the cover every single week. These 3 defined anime and manga in the early to mid 2000s and are widely considered to be some of the best of the medium. For the longest time, I've felt like I've been missing out on these, so since the last anime video, I've decided to fix that. In the past year, holy fuck, it's been a year, I've been going through each of the big 3 for the very first time, and today we'll be going through my thoughts on them individually and what makes the big 3 so special. So build up your chakra, activate your bankai, and Gomu Gomu no smash that like button, and let's get right into what makes the big 3 so iconic. That was fucking cringe. You should be shot. You should be killed violently.
An all-new episode of One Piece. Next. Stand fast. Tsunami.
First on the agenda today is the iconic One Piece, created by Ichiro Oda in 1997. One Piece is notorious for being one of the longest running anime and manga out there. The manga is well over 1,000 chapters, and the anime hit 1,000 episodes just last year. It is so popular that it is not only the best-selling manga of all time, but also the best-selling comic in general of all time. Though that's probably because it's been going on for so fucking long. But I digress. You can't go 5 minutes in any anime-related circles without at least knowing about One Piece. It's that big of a deal. But because of how long One Piece is, I just could not justify watching the anime for this video. I've got tons of other shit to watch for other videos as well as for this video, and it would just take me far too long to sit through 1,000+ episodes, some of which are just anime-only filler, so in the name of efficiency, I opted to read the manga instead. Starting on Halloween of 2021, I read roughly 1 or 2 arcs every weekend and got all the way caught up by April of 2022. I've also been putting the anime on in the background while I do other stuff, so I have also seen a bit of the anime. I'll be referring to the manga throughout this video, but I will be showing footage of the anime, obviously, just so there's something visually interesting to look at. Let's get into it. Wealth, fame, power. The world had it all won by one man, the Pirate King, Gold Roger. At his death, the words he spoke drove countless men out to sea. My treasure? It's yours if you want it. Fine, I left all the world as there. And so, men set sights on the Grand Line in pursuit of their dreams. The world has truly entered the Great Pirate Era. 10 years later, enter Monkey D. Luffy, a young boy who really looks up to his friend Shanks, leader of his own pirate crew. Luffy wants to become a pirate too, but not just any pirate. Luffy wants to find Roger's treasure, the One Piece, and become the Pirate King. Unfortunately, he's too young to be sailing with his pirate friends, and even though he accidentally ate a devil's fruit and gained the powerful ability to stretch, Shanks and the others leave him behind. 10 more years pass, and Luffy is now old enough to go on his own journey, and from then on he gathers together a ragtag crew and sails the Grand Line in search of adventure and the elusive One Piece. But you all probably knew that, right? Story-wise, One Piece is pretty formulaic for the most part. The Straw Hats go to a new island, they get acquainted with the local inhabitants, they find out some guy is doing bad shit there, Luffy beats his ass, on to the next island, rinse and repeat. I'm obviously way oversimplifying it, and I'm not necessarily criticizing it, but it does work for what it is. It's a bit of a loose format, especially early on, which I really liked, but it gets really complex and lore-heavy as the series progresses. It has what I would call the Adventure Time effect, where it starts off episodic and goofy, but gets full-on story arcs and complex plot lines after they've kind of established everything, namely the main cast. The characters of One Piece are definitely the series' strong suit. Each member of the Straw Hat crew is incredibly likable, and even the characters that show up for like one arc and then never again still have a lot of depth and interesting things about them. First up, we gotta talk about Luffy.
Monkey to Luffy.
As the obvious main character of the series, Luffy is about as stereotypically shonen as a protagonist could get. He's not very smart, he eats ungodly amounts of food,
Pussy too.
and is incredibly powerful and skilled in combat. It's a tried and true trope that's been the case since Son Goku, but I think that the stereotype of a shonen protagonist often gets a bad rap. Which is to say, Luffy is not a deep character, but he's a fun character. What I mean by this is that he is always upfront about his beliefs. He values friendship and following one's dreams over anything else, and while not very original, it's still really endearing. Unlike Goku, for instance, where you kind of have a hard time telling what his motives are on a surface level, Luffy is upfront about it from the very start, and it never changes. You know exactly what kind of character he is from the very first chapter, and he stays that way throughout the whole series, but that doesn't make him any less entertaining. He can be dumb and goofy sometimes, okay, a lot of the time, but it's his blind optimism and trust in his friends that keeps you invested. You know, he doesn't just do shit for no reason. Everything he does is to further his goal and to help his friends reach theirs. His simple outlook on life is what makes him so endearing, and it's kind of cliche to say this, but he is my favorite One Piece character. Oh, you like the main character? Yeah, real original, buddy. Why don't you suck my fat nuts? Going in order of joining the crew, next we have the minority hunter himself, Roronoa Zoro. Though he was once a pirate bounty hunter, Zoro finds himself joining Luffy's crew and becoming a pirate himself, with the goal of becoming the world's best swordsman. This dude is the most badass motherfucker on the planet. He's angsty, he fucks up crowds of people in an instant, and the motherfucker triple wields swords with one in his mouth that is metal as fuck. He's not really that deep of a character, all things considered, but he's cool as fuck, and that's really all he needs to be. Though that's not to say Zoro doesn't have any depth to him at all. After losing a childhood friend, Zoro begins to value pride and honor as a swordsman, and upon meeting Luffy, makes the promise to never lose to anyone ever again. He would rather die than lose to anybody, something that shapes his interactions with every opponent he faces and his rivalry with Sanji. Of course, his devotion to Luffy and the other Straw Hats is one of his most admirable qualities, and is where a lot of his more subtle character development lies. When he first meets Luffy, he wants nothing to do with him, but once he joins the crew, he starts to believe in and fight for not just Luffy's dreams, but the dreams of the whole crew, and I think that's pretty endearing. Zoro is such a bamf that he's cool even when nothing happened. Zoro fans when he takes a left instead of a right. Nami is the next character to join the crew. She's first introduced as a thief who steals from pirates, but we later find out that she was actually a pirate herself, trying to steal money any way that she can in order to save her village. She loves money, which makes sense because women be shopping. But aside from the superficial, Nami is the navigator for the Straw Hats and also the brains of the operation. She kinda holds the group together in a way where without her, they probably would have died at sea if they hadn't killed each other already. She's the voice of reason in a group where reason doesn't always apply. You know, she keeps the craziness in check. As their navigator, Nami has extensive knowledge of the weather, and she utilizes this in her combat. With her Climatact, she is able to control atmospheric pressure and shit to create clouds, mirages, lightning, and all kinds of weather-related shit. It's a really interesting way to make a character who you wouldn't expect to be that strong into both a great combatant and a useful member of the crew in other regards. I'm gonna get to her backstory later, but after that arc, she doesn't really have much growth except for her big, massive, honking, motherfucking tits.
I'm gonna be honest.
What other motherfucker you know?
Only looking at your titties right now.
Moving on, we have Usopp, the crew's marksman with a tendency to spin tall tales to anyone who will listen. He is named after Aesop's fables, which is directly tied into his Boy Who Cried Wolf backstory. You ain't slick, Oda. I see what you're doing, you ain't slick. Usopp is without a doubt the weakest member of the crew in terms of combat, but for what he lacks in physical prowess, he more than makes up for with his heart and ingenuity. While Luffy and Zoro often take the direct approach to combat, Usopp often has to be more strategic and creative with his fighting style. He's not as strong as the big boys and he knows it, but he can still find a way to fight in his own way, and though his cowardice often gets the better of him, he'll always stick his neck out for his friends when the time calls for it. He's a lot like Luffy in that sense, like, yo, I have this goal and I'm gonna reach it whether it's possible or not, and you better not fuck with my friends. It's super admirable to see something like this from the weakest character, a bit of a Moomin Rider type beat. I actually didn't like Usopp for a while because he was just one joke over and over again in the first stretch of the series. Oh, look at me, I'm a coward, all these big guys are big and strong and scary. It gets old pretty quick, right? Didn't quite like the humor, but I actually grew to like him a lot during during the Water 7 arc, because it's the first arc since his introduction to really take him seriously. Sparing some of the details, a conflict arises within the crew that leads to Usopp leaving for a while, but what he learns by the end of the saga is that though they won't always agree with each other, he is nothing without his friends. And I don't mean that physically or in terms of combat, but rather that it's his friends that give him strength, that even though he knows he's weak, his love for his friends gives him the strength and courage to try anyways. After the time skip, Usopp becomes just as much of an asset as the rest of the crew, and that only happened because he devoted himself to improving specifically for his friends. Like I said, I didn't like Usopp much at first, and though he's still not really one of my favorites, he really grew on me.
Sniper King. Shoot down that flag.
Roger.
Special attack! Firebird Star!
Sanji is the next to join the crew. He's the chef of the crew and fights with incredibly powerful kicks, with his dream being to find the fabled All Blue, a place where the four seas meet. This dude is the biggest simp on the planet. Simp! He's your classic pervert character because every anime needs one of those, right? Why the fuck is it always nosebleeds? I genuinely don't get that shit. Anyways, aside from being a massive simp, Sanji is the third big fighter of the group alongside Luffy and Zoro. However, the difference between him and the others is that Sanji has a strict moral code when it comes to both combat and to his cooking. He will never allow the people he serves to go hungry. He will always put his best into every meal, and will throw down if you disrespect his cooking. In terms of combat though, his simpery is actually a big part of his character. While Luffy and Zoro will fight pretty much anyone indiscriminately, Sanji refuses to fight women and can't bear to see any woman upset in his presence, so he will always fight for their honor, even if it ends up being to his detriment. Some call him a simp, others call him chivalrous, but I call him kind of a fucking badass.
Kill yourself!
I think Sanji might be the only character aside from Luffy to get additional backstory long after his introduction, which I think is a testament to how versatile these characters can be. You can have this character for like 20 years and then retcon some new shit into their backstory and it somehow feels completely natural. Oda, you're a fucking madman. The real moral of Sanji's character is that smoking is cool. Every anime at the time needed a funny little character to join the main cast for whatever reason. You know, a dubious little creature. And for One Piece, that is none other than Tony Chopper. Chopper was once a regular reindeer, but after eating a devil's fruit, he becomes a humanoid abomination and gains the ability to transform. He joins the crew to become their doctor, with his dream being to discover a cure for all diseases and ailments in honor of his mentor. His defining trait is that he is incredibly naive, he's basically a child mentally, but he takes after Luffy in that he can't bear to see his friends hurt, so he will go to extreme lengths to keep them safe. Yes, I too will do anything I can to avoid doing my fucking job. Kinda based, actually. Dude, I fucking love Chopper's backstory. He lives a lonely existence after eating the devil's fruit, but finds the one person who doesn't see him as a freak and sticks with him, and this becomes the main reason he joins the crew. When everyone else saw him as a monster, Luffy saw him as food, but also as a friend, and for someone like Chopper, that means a ton. He's a wholesome little critter in his off time, but when shit goes down, you can be sure that he's there for his homies. Love this little dubious friendo. He's a little feller, I'd even say. Next to join the crew is Nico Robin. A villain when we first meet her in Alabasta, Robin kind of invites herself onto the crew, with her goal being to use her archaeology skills to decipher the truth about the Void Century, a century where all knowledge of it has been destroyed and is illegal to research. This all ties into Robin's backstory and serves as her motivation for traveling with the crew. Bro, I fucking love Robin's backstory. I think it's the best of the entire crew. She became an archaeologist at a really young age, but her entire home island of Ohara was destroyed by the Marines, leaving her as the only survivor. She lives her entire life as a fugitive just for existing, and at a certain point, she starts to believe it. She starts to believe that her existence is a mistake, but Luffy and the crew help her to see that she's wrong to think that. Once she's fully on board the crew, she's kind of a vibe. I like how she's kind of like the aunt of the crew, where she's always amused by Luffy and the boys' antics, unlike Nami, who is often annoyed. After the Enies Lobby arc, she's more of a background character, helping out with fights every now and again, and she plays a pretty major role in some of the later arcs, but as a character, her growth kinda stops there. But it's good growth, so it's fine. The time skip also gave her some growth, if you know what I'm saying. Hey. Listen, man, I know everybody is so infatuated with their big fucking titties, but why does nobody acknowledge the fact that her entire facial structure changes after the time skip? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Why does this happen? Alright, I gotta be honest with y'all. Frankie is probably my least favorite member of the Straw Hat crew. That's not to say that I don't like him. He's a vibe sometimes, but I just don't find him that interesting. Frankie is really great when he's first introduced in Water 7. I really like his backstory with Tom and Iceberg, swearing off building ships because he doesn't want his creations used for evil. Bro, when he leaves his surrogate family to join the crew, I felt that shit. But after that point, he doesn't really do anything except fix the ship off screen and takes part in fights occasionally. He does utilize his talents pretty frequently, but never in a way that I found to be all that interesting. I really like his pre-time skip design, but I think he's the only character where I like their pre-time skip design better than post-time skip. He feels really over-designed post-time skip, which I guess makes sense in context because he loves modifying himself, but it's just too busy in my opinion. Though my criticisms aside, Frankie is a good character where it matters most. He's an absolute bro. He has great chemistry with most of the other crew members. He respects manliness and chivalry, so he meshes really well with Zoro and Sanji, but he's also easily amused enough to vibe with Luffy and Chopper. Frankie is a really cool character, right? He's a cyborg surfer bro who builds crazy contraptions, but he honestly lacks the depth that many of the other Straw Hats have after he's introduced. Still love this guy though. He's got that Jimmy Neutron fade. I love it.
Good smell. Flavor.
So he's finally here, performing for you. It's the 9th member of the Straw Hat crew. Brook, a living skeleton, is next to join the crew as their musician. 50 years ago, Brook ate a devil's fruit that allowed him to live on after death, and this power was unfortunately activated after his entire crew was killed by enemy pirates. Brook was stuck on this ship for 50 long years all by himself until the Straw Hats found him, and he joins the crew with the intent of reuniting with Laboon, a whale he befriended many years ago that the Straw Hats happened to meet during their entrance to the Grand Line. Brook is a lot like Frankie in the sense that after his introductory arc where we learn his backstory and his goals and all that, he stops being that interesting of a character. He's not that deep beyond his desire to reunite with his friend, but I still like him for one reason. He's funny as hell. Dude is always cracking terrible skeleton puns, asking bitches for their panties like the pimp that he is, and he really meshes well with Chopper and Frankie. Comedic relief without a doubt, but there ain't nothing wrong with that. He's definitely a character that works much better in the anime than in the manga because his songs don't really translate that well to a written format. Like for example, when I first read the Bink Sake scene, I had to immediately go and see how the anime adapted it just because I felt that the song would help it hit a little bit better. And it certainly did because this is my favorite recruitment of any crew member. And finally, the 10th member to join the crew is Jinbei, a fishman and former Shichibukai who joins the crew as their helmsman. Luffy first meets Jinbei during the Impel Down arc, but he actually doesn't officially join the crew until after the time skip during the Wano arc. He's been around for a while, but never actually joined the crew until somewhat recently, like 10 years later in real life, which is kinda crazy to me, but it just goes to show that Oda isn't afraid to break his own formula. Anyways, I like Jinbei because he offers a more experienced and strategic viewpoint than the rest of the crew. His unmatched sense of duty makes him an incredibly loyal crew member, but at the same time he'll call out Luffy and the others when they're being stupid. His experience as a pirate gives him knowledge that our rookies don't have, often getting them out of situations that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten out of, such as escaping Big Mom during Whole Cake Island. He still hasn't officially been on the crew for very long, so we really haven't had a huge chance to see what his dynamic is like with the rest of them, save for his brief appearances in other arcs where he helps the crew out in a much more limited capacity. With Luffy, he serves in more of a mentor role, since he's somebody that Luffy respects and often advises him on strategy and helps him in his training. We're obviously going to be seeing more of him now that he's officially a member of the crew, and I'm pretty excited for that. I just threw a lot of characters at you, so just as a quick recap, his name Zoro is just like a samurai and an LED Nam's not shy. Who stops doing that marksman thing? Sanji's cooking, Chopper's doctoring. In all seriousness though, One Piece is a rare instance where I genuinely like every single member of the main cast. I do have my criticisms of some of them, but I love all of the Straw Hats, and some of them have really grown to become some of my favorite fictional characters, period. They all have so much personality, and I haven't even gotten into some of the recurring characters or the ones that show up for like an arc and then disappear. Vivi is an absolute vibe. Boa Hancock and her massive titties are super compelling. Yamato is a trans icon, and some of the other pirates like Trafalgar Law can be really interesting. Ace, just fucking Ace. Absolute fucking legend. Villains like Arlong, Crocodile, Doflamingo, and Kaido feel genuinely threatening, and other villains have their motives a little bit more ambiguous like Smoker or pretty much all of the Marine Admirals. You know, you got the Shichibukai, the Yonko, there are just so fucking many characters in this series that there simply isn't enough time to go over every single one, but there are very few that I do not like. It's Buggy. I fucking hate Buggy, alright? Fuck Buggy. All my homies hate Buggy, because he's unfunny and sucks ass.
Can I tickle your penis till you fart? What? I said, y'all trying to play some basketball?
One Piece has such a unique and recognizable art style. Every character is either tall and lanky or fat and gigantic. There is no in between. The anime really exaggerates the lankiness, especially early on, but I really appreciate that the anime's art style changes a lot as it goes on. Like, bro, when they get to Wano and the outlines get thicker and the shading gets more detailed, it's fucking cum-worthy, bro. They often say that one of the tells of a varied and unique art style, especially in anime, is the faces. And I'd say that One Piece has this for sure, at least for the main cast. You can identify any of the Straw Hats just by their face, and switching the faces around just straight up looks wrong, which you think would be pretty obvious, but this isn't always the case in anime where characters often have the same face copy and pasted. The classic silhouette rule also applies here, where almost every Straw Hat is instantly recognizable from just their silhouette, and this even extends into the larger cast outside of the main group. Oda knows how to draw some attractive and unique characters. Here's a boob joke. I don't know what to put here. Fuck you. I haven't seen much of the anime aside from the episodes that I grabbed for this video and Pluto TV looping everything up until Enies Lobby. Pluto TV, mad underrated by the way, but Toei goes so fucking hard with the animation. I could easily point to some of the more recent arcs where technology and HD quality make this shit look fucking gorgeous, but even early on, this show is insanely well animated. Like, bro, look at this shit. This isn't even that far into it. As somebody who's read the manga, I'll be honest and say that it's sometimes kind of hard to tell what the fuck is going on in, say, like a fight scene or something. Paneling is usually pretty good, and it's way easier to follow in color, but reading this shit in black and white, it's like looking at the fucking scribbles from Foster's Home. Like, what the fuck is this? And that is not at all a slight on Oda's art style, because obviously the manga and anime are gonna be different, but the anime improves this shit tenfold. It's fucking beautiful. Some mighty fine Sakuga. In the same vein as that, Netflix is currently working on a live-action adaptation of One Piece, and I'm sorry, but there's just no fucking way. How are you going to take this, or this, or this, and put it into live action and have it actually look good? I know it's a common meme to be like, oh, live action anime is bad. You know, like a cowboy type Bebop, but I just have so little faith in this. But not for the obvious reasons, like animation being an inherently more expressive medium than live action, or any of the typical arguments you hear about that shit. You know, I'll give it a chance, of course. You know, Oda is apparently involved, which I think says a lot, and the cast seems pretty enthusiastic about it, but you just know for a fact that Netflix isn't gonna treat this shit well. 90% of the thing is gonna have to be CG, which basically defeats the purpose of being live action in the first place. My biggest concern, aside from the obvious criticisms, is how they're gonna pace the thing. Apparently they've already cast Arlong, a character from a few arcs in, and it's like, why? Like, how in the fuck are they gonna adapt the entire Romance Dawn saga into presumably 8 episodes without cutting out fucking half of it? There's no way they're gonna do like an episode per arc or some shit and actually do it justice. I just can't imagine it's gonna go well. If it does do well, all I ask is that you cast Victoria Justice as fucking Viola or something. I don't know. Whatever, there's your obligated Victoria Justice reference for this video. Fuck you. Getting back into the positive vibes, One Piece has a fucking banger OST. Like, bro, this show does not have a single bad opening. We Go slaps. Superpowers bangs. Kazeo Sagashite underrated. Crazy Rainbow, Brand New World, Fight Together, all slappers. We Are might just be top 3 anime openings of all time. There is not a single bad version of that song aside from the one I'm gonna sing in about 10 minutes. Plus, the background music fucking pumps most of the time too. Like when the boys are pulling up to Arlong and that joint hits, bro, you know the shit's about to go down. I talked about him a little bit earlier, but Chopper's song and Big Sake go pretty hard as well. Pirates were born to sing, baby. But the music isn't all there is to the sound of One Piece, because the voice acting is some top tier stuff, in Japanese at least. The Japanese cast gives some great performances, with Mayumi Tanaka as Luffy being particularly great. Like, bro, when I was reading the manga after having seen a bit of the anime, anytime I read Gomu Gomu no, I always read it in her voice. Like, it's iconic. However, the English dub just does not do it for me. Now, I'm not talking about the notoriously shitty 4Kids dub where they censored stuff to be more kid-friendly, because everybody knows the anime was dealt a pretty fucking raw deal there, but rather I'm talking about the current official dub. I don't have anything against it or any of the voice actors or anything like that. If it's your thing, it's your thing, but to me, it's just like the same Funimation people you hear in everything else, and a lot of them don't really sound like the characters to me. Like, you know, nothing against Colleen Clinkenbeard, but she just doesn't fit for Luffy in my opinion. To be more specific, she works for Luffy in a comedic context. Like, in funny scenes, she's completely fine, but in scenes where Luffy is supposed to be angry or sad or badass, it just comes off as fucking goofy. You know, I love Chris Sabat, but I don't think of Zoro as having that deep of a voice, you know what I mean? In fairness, I have only seen clips of the dub, so maybe they work better in context, and it probably varies from character to character, but it's just not for me. As for the more general writing, this isn't really like your other typical shonen, where there's often a focus on training arcs in between main arcs to show how strong a character has gotten, but even so, with that, One Piece has a really great sense of progression. We see Luffy go from this nobody rookie pirate, we see him form his crew from scratch, we see him get stronger not through physical training, though that does happen during the time skip, but through his friendships and desire to reach his goal, getting stronger along the way. By the time of Enies Lobby, Luffy and the Straw Hat crew have made a name for themselves as enemies of the government and are considered especially dangerous even alongside the rest of the worst generation. Post time skip, we see Luffy join forces with other pirate crews to form an alliance. After Dressrosa, he has other ships going around under the Straw Hat name, and most recently has become one of the Yonko, the four most feared pirates in the world. Luffy's got alliances, subordinates, and the attention of the world government, when just a few years ago he was some wannabe chump with a stretchy cock. By the time he beats Kaido in Wano, it feels like he's earned it, and you feel it in the characters themselves, but you also feel it in the world. Like the world itself changes as the series goes on, which you don't always see. The world of One Piece is truly something else. From just the first chapter, you can tell that it's pretty damn big and complex, much like my fat cock. You learn about the 4 seas, the Grand Line, and the New World separated by the Red Line, and all of the rules that come with that. Almost every island the crew goes to has some kind of deeper history, and oftentimes this history is deeply intertwined with the villain of the arc as well as the larger world as a whole. The geopolitical bullshit of one part of the world affects the rest of the world. This is best seen with pretty much every post-time skip arc, but stuff like this is seen all over the series. The whole world just has this whole deeper history with the whole Poneglyph plotline regarding the Void Century, how this all ties into Roger's treasure and the oppressive world government. It can get rather complex, and what it's trying to say thematically regarding government oppression impeding the dreams of the people is pretty fucking based. Hello, base department, is this Ichiro Oda? Yeah, I'd like to place an order, please. It's actually kind of amazing how Oda can put some seemingly pointless shit in an early arc, not mention it for a while, and then bring that shit back like 5 arcs later and have it be incredibly important and meaningful. Like, bro, this man was teasing the crew going to Wano since like long before the time skip, and then he finally pays that off in one of the best arcs like 15 years later, and it still feels completely natural. The dude is fucking crazy, and I love it. So far, I've been really positive, but one criticism that I do have is that the power scaling is all over the fucking place, which is fine in a combat sense because who really gives a shit, but in a narrative sense, it gets kind of fucking annoying. Here's what I mean, right? Almost every major arc suffers from what I like to call the Goku effect, where you have the main character that can easily beat the big bad, but to give the other characters time to shine and to build conflict, and in some cases drag the story out, you find an excuse to write the main character out of the story for a bit, only to have him come in and beat the big bad in the end. Dragon Ball did this for most notably the Saiyan and Frieza arcs, but One Piece does this all the fucking time. Luffy will often fight the big bad, lose, and get put into a scenario where he can't fight while the crew buys him some time, only to then come back and win in the end. It happened in Arlong Park, it happened in Alabasta, it happened in Enies Lobby, and several other arcs afterwards, including Wano. It gets really annoying, especially when you start to notice it. Like, once you see it, you won't unsee it. In a one-on-one fight, Luffy loses. In a one-on-one fight, 5 fucking times, Luffy takes the cake. However, the difference between some of the earlier instances of this and the more recent ones is that Oda has kind of figured out how to write Luffy out of situations without actually writing him out, if that makes sense. A great example is in the Dressrosa arc, where instead of helping the rest of the crew with the main conflict, Luffy is fighting in a tournament to obtain a spoilery personal item. He's essentially out of the bigger picture, but his actions are still important to the plot of the arc, before he comes back in the end to fight Doflamingo. I like this approach way better than the earlier approach, where it's like, oh, Luffy got his foot stuck in the toilet again, where it's much less obvious what Oda is doing, and it still manages to be compelling.
He's made a rubble!
How did that happen?
Yo ho ho, he took a bite of gum gum!
But you can't talk about One Piece without talking about its magic system and powers, and unsurprisingly, there's a few of them. Devil's Fruits are a really cool idea. You get a cool power, but the trade-off is that you can no longer swim, for which for a user base made up of almost entirely pirates is pretty ironic. They're almost a lot like stands in JoJo, where the powers themselves are often very specific, but at the same time they're played kind of fast and loose, where a Devil Fruit power can be whatever the hell Oda wants it to be. Oda has a way of making powers that sound lame as hell, but are actually pretty cool. Like, for example, the Doru Doru no Mi. This motherfucker's power is candle wax, and it sounds stupid as fuck, but he uses it in ways that you wouldn't expect, and it's actually kinda cool. The vast amount of Devil Fruits out there ties directly into the world building as well, where there are these in-universe classifications on what type of power somebody has, and it usually plays a role in a lot of fights. The other primary magic system is Haki, which is essentially One Piece's version of generic energy powers seen in plenty of other anime. Like Devil's Fruits, Haki has several types, and one's mastery over it can make them incredibly strong even without some other kind of power. Though in the lore it has always been around, background, we don't actually learn what Haki is until pretty far into the series, which both helps the world feel more alive, but also feels a bit tacked on. There's an aura of mystery around it at first, it's exciting, but once it's explained, I find that it kinda makes fights a little bit less interesting. Instead of using their unique powers in creative ways, characters end up hoping that their invisible power is stronger than the other guy's invisible power. This is less so the case with Luffy because his stretchy powers offer a bit more creativity even with Haki involved, and this is also the case with some of the more unique Devil Fruit users, but with characters who don't have a Devil Fruit power like Zoro and Sanji for instance, it really just is I can slash and kick harder than the other guy. Luffy is actually a really interesting case because this motherfucker is already excessively strong without Haki, so throwing it into the mix as a way to boost his already kind of overpowered ability is insane, but still really fucking hype. I won't spoil it here because the anime hasn't covered it yet, but 1044. If you know, you know. That shit's nutty. It seems that Oda's philosophy in writing Luffy has changed. Since early on, he just had the latent ability to beat anybody's ass, but as the story goes on, the enemies get stronger as well, which is to say that Luffy doesn't always have an easy time anymore. This is great in that it creates way more interesting fights with actual tension as opposed to, you know, the audience knows Luffy is strong enough to beat his ass, but the villain doesn't joke that plagued early arcs. Speaking of which, if I had to pick my favorite arcs, I would say that Arlong Park, Enies Lobby, Marineford, Whole Cake Island, and Wano are all definitely up there. And the reason these are my favorite arcs is because they all have one thing in common, and you'll see what I mean shortly. We would be here all fucking day if I did a detailed analysis of every individual arc for every anime I talk about in this video today, so to keep things brief and to give my takes on individual arcs, I'll be doing tier lists ranking each arc of each anime. Reminder that my opinion is objective fact, and any disagreement means that I hate you personally. Let's get into it. Hey. One Piece arcs tier list. Let's get it, baby. Woo! First arc, the Romance Dawn arc. Of course, this is the arc that introduces us to a few of our favorite characters. Monkey D. Luffy, even fucking Kobe. This man had the biggest glow up of all time, bro. Now, I like the Romance Dawn arc because it's like really nostalgic, even though I didn't grow up with it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? Like, it's got that kind of vibe, right? We're gonna put that baby in S tier. A tier. It is an introduction, so of course it leaves a lot to be desired, but all that is to be desired comes later, so you know. Next is the Orange Town arc. This is where Luffy and the gang first meet Buggy. They fight his ass, beat his ass hard. A lot of people really like Buggy, and I joked about it earlier, but I literally do not like Buggy. I think Buggy is boring and annoying and not funny. I know people like that he just consistently fails upward, right? Like that's his whole appeal. I just don't think he's that funny. But in his introductory arc in Orange Town, I do like how he's genuinely threatening in that arc a little bit. He's goofy and threatening at the same time, but I feel like later arcs kind of fuck him over. But other than that, I think Orange Town's fine. It's just kind of fine. It's kind of the first big fight of the series as well. You know, Luffy gets to throw the fuck down, and I like that. It's a vibe. I'm calling it B. I don't care if that's controversial. Suck my ass. Next is the Syrup Village arc. This is the arc that introduces us to Usopp. Honestly, I felt this was the first arc of the whole series that was kind of dragged out a little bit. It felt a little bit too long for what it was. I didn't really... Granted, it's not even that long in the grand scheme of things compared to, like, fucking Wano or whatever, but I just didn't think this arc was very interesting, in all honesty. Like, you know, I like Usopp. Usopp's great, but I didn't really care for the villains of the arc. I didn't really care for the people we were supposed to care about, like Usopp's fucking rich girl sick friend who's dying of fucking AIDS or whatever, or his little children friends that are the only people that take him seriously. Like I get their purpose in the story, but I didn't care for them. The Usopp stuff vibes with me when they focus on Usopp, like, you know, and his like desire to be a great pirate like his father. That shit's great. I love that. Everything else was just, I kind of just felt tacked on to me, but it's not terrible. We'll call it a B. Next is the Barati arc. This is the arc that introduces us to Sanji, and this is a good one. I like the flashback stuff. A lot like Syrup Village, it was kind of dragged out, but not in like the kind of the same way as Syrup Village. Like a lot of the stuff in it is like necessary and it's good, but there's kind of just some stuff in this arc that comes out of absolutely nowhere. It's been a while since I've read it, so forgive me if I'm like making a really stupid mistake, but I don't remember why Mihawk shows up to fight Zoro. He just shows up randomly in the middle of the arc, and then Zoro fights him, and that's like a whole thing. But like, I don't think they ever explain why he shows up. He just does. It's weird. I don't know why that happens. But other than that, I mean, you know, don't have an issue with that. So I'm, you know, I have brain damage also. Hey guys, severe brain damage. Your Barati arc. I'm a big Sanji stan. I like Sanji a lot, so I'm gonna call this an A. Now Arlong Park. I'm gonna explain that one later. That's a whole part. Loguetown. Even in the manga, it's a bit of a filler arc, except there's a couple moments in it that are really cool, like the Zoro moment with the sword, where he has the sword. Let me see if I can do the sword thing. Let's do that. Let's do that shit. Fucking Well, I would have fucking lost an arm. Awesome. And of course, there's the iconic scene in Chapter 100 where Luffy is on the same guillotine where Gold Roger got his head cut off and proclaims that he's gonna be king of the pirates. That's such a great moment. But other than that, kind of a inconsequential arc. Aside from the big moment that actually makes it important, right? Call it a C. I like the big moments, but it otherwise just doesn't really do anything for anybody. Moving on to the Alabasta Saga. Next, we have the Reverse Mountain arc, which is the crew's first entrance into the Grand Line, and it's the introduction to Vivi and Baroque works. It's a whole setup kind of thing. We'll call that one a C as well. But next we have Drum Island. Of course, this is the introduction of Chopper, the fucking funniest little character around. He's a goofy little guy, I'd even say. This is definitely one of the better crew member introductions, because Chopper's story it's very emotionally resonant. I really like I really vibe with Chopper's story. You know, he's a fucking little creature. I didn't really care much for the Kingdom stuff in it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I liked all of Chopper's stuff in it because again, One Piece's strong suit is really the characters. And that's really what I vibe with in this arc. And of course, this arc is the source of one of the best memes of the year. Chopper crying with his dick out. Hashtag cockpiece, baby. But, you know, I like Drum Island. We'll call that A. I feel like any arc that introduces a major character is usually pretty good. But of course, then we get right into Alabasta, the first real big major arc of the series, where we have like an extended, really long storyline, a lot of character moments, a bunch of big fights, a bunch of big brawls. It's a big boy, big PogChamp moment. And I think it's definitely really good. It's just, I wouldn't say it's quite one of my favorite arcs as far as the big major arcs go. You know, I like Vivi. Vivi's cool. I like some of the people involved in the government of Alabasta. I like Crocodile. He's a great villain. We get introduced to Nico Robin. And I like the aesthetic. There's a lot of cool stuff in the arc. I don't know. Something about it just doesn't sit right with me. Story-wise, wasn't a huge fan. I thought it was kind of like, oh, fucking, we gotta save the thing. It's like, yeah, we knew this was gonna happen. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. I'm just saying words at this point. This is fucking... Alabasta. Alabasta's good. I like it. Just not one of my favorites. I'm gonna put it in B. Suck my ass. Then we get to the Jaya arc. This one's not really that great, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you, because it really all Jaya is just set up for Skypiea. I think the most substantial thing that happens in the Jaya arc is our introduction to Blackbeard, which is, you know, obviously one of the major villains of the series. You can't not fucking ignore that. But aside from that, it's just a big lore dump. Honestly, do I really want to say it? Do I really want to put this in D? I really don't want to, but I will. I'll do it. I'll do it for your dick. Wait a second. Then we have the second major arc of the series, Skypiea, where they go to Sky Island, an island in the sky, as the name implies. I'll be honest, I think Skypiea is definitely my least favorite of the major One Piece arcs, just because it felt so disconnected from the world we had grown to know so far at that point in the series. Like, you know, you think of the Grand Line, you think sailing the fucking oceans and shit, it's cool, but then you get to Skypiea, and it's just like this completely different culture from anything else that we've seen, and not in like a good way like Alabasta was, because Alabasta seemed like it made sense culturally within the world. Like it's a desert island, so of course they're gonna have like deserty things going on. But Skypiea is like, oh, everybody's got wings and is also like half angel. There's a whole religion going on. I guess that's kind of the point, is that it's supposed to feel so disconnected from the rest of the world. But I felt that it did so in a bad way. I didn't really care for it. I didn't really care for a lot of the side characters they introduced. Like, I can't even remember their names. I did like Eneru. Eneru was a cool villain. Eneru, Enel, however you fucking say his name. He makes the funny damn Daniel face. He does the meme. Not terrible. It does have. I like the lore that it introduces. Near the end, a lot of poneglyph lore is expanded upon. We get to learn a little bit more about Gold Roger. But other than that, is kind of to me. We'll call that one a C. I have terrible taste so far. Are you guys angry yet? Moving on to the Water 7 saga, we first have the Long Ring, Long Land arc. This is kind of a filler arc. Even in the manga, it's a filler arc. You got Luffy fighting Foxy, which is pretty cool. He's got the afro and the boxing gloves. Luffy is black-coated. This is real. It's funny, one of the first episodes of the anime that I had seen was part of the Long Ring, Long Land arc. I forget specifically which episode. I think it was the one where they get Chopper back. So I'm a little bit nostalgic for it in that sense. Like, this is the first time I've experienced the One Piece anime, but as far as the manga goes and the general story, it's just kind of inconsequential. We didn't really need this. It hasn't come up in any meaningful way beyond fucking Aokiji showing up at the end. I'll be honest with you. D. D's for D's nuts. Next up is the Water 7 arc. This is a fantastic fucking arc. I love this one. The city of Water 7 is fucking gorgeous. The whole story with Usopp is great, with losing the Mary and all that. We get introduced to Frankie and his whole backstory. We learn that Robin's motives were not what she claimed they were. There's that whole setting up the whole Enies Lobby arc. It's a whole ass motherfucking vibe. I like it. But then we take an arc that's really good and we make it even better, making one of my favorite arcs ever, Enies Lobby, or as I call it, Anus Lobby, because there's a big fucking anus in the earth right below it. I feel like that was intentional. Oda, you're onto something. But nah, dude, do I really need to explain why Enies Lobby is so great? It's you learn Robin's backstory. You have the whole crew coming together to save her. It's a whole ass fucking war. There are 2 entire segments that are just the main crew members fighting the CP9, and they like switch opponents frequently. It's fucking wild. It's insane. It really does feel like a war. The way everything progresses is insane. I'm scratching my asshole right now. And Luffy, this just illustrates how much of a badass Luffy is. This motherfucker debuts Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd in the same arc. It's fucking wild. That's some crazy ass fucking power progression. I love that shit. Enies Lobby S tier. When Robin said I want to live, I did not feel that because I actually want to die, but that's beside the point. Imagine being carried in the womb for 9 months and your parents name you fucking Garp. Moving on, we have Thriller Bark. This is the introduction to Brook. Like I said earlier, this is my favorite recruitment of any Straw Hat member. Brook's story is so great with the whole Big Sake scene. That sold me on Brook, honestly. I wasn't really sold on him to begin with, but once that Big Sake joint fucking hits, bro. Scrumptious. Like, just for that, I almost want to put Thriller Bark in A, but I think I wasn't really huge on the story itself. It was very clearly Halloween themed. We do get some cool characters, like fucking Perona shows up. She's got that goth pixie aesthetic. I don't even know what the fuck that is, but it makes me a little horny, I can't lie. I like the climax of the arc where there's the big fucking giant with Luffy's soul in it, and Luffy like takes the souls of all these fucking dead carcasses or whatever the fuck, and basically becomes Gear 4 before Gear 4 was a thing, which I thought was pretty cool. It's got cool moments, but otherwise not the greatest arc, though the Big Sake shit does elevate it to a level that I fucking love. We'll put that bitch in B. But now we get into the really good shit with the Summit War Saga, starting with the Sabaody Archipelago arc. Sabaody was kind of fun for like the first few chapters. Like you kind of get used to it, like, oh, this place is really cool looking. It's where all the pirates come together. It's got a lot of cool lore stuff. We get first introduced to the first generation, which is really cool. It really marks the halfway point of the series. You got the whole slavery plot line with the fish cunt. I don't remember what her name is. But I thought that was a really cool moment in the sense that Luffy doesn't give a flying fuck about how godly the government thinks they are. He'll beat their fucking asses if you fuck with his friends, which I absolutely love. And of course, the end of the arc where the Marines come in and just start fucking shit up is wild. It's insane. And then just Luffy losing his entire crew to Kuma, probably thinking they're all fucking dead and not knowing where they are. It's just a great moment. He's just fucking love that shit. It's actually pretty good. I'm honestly gonna put it in A just for that last moment alone. Fuck you. I have zero integrity. Then we have the Amazon Lily arc, which is honestly kind of filler for the most part, aside from the introduction of a pretty major character in Boa Hancock and her massive fucking titties. And I'm pretty sure this is our first display of Haki being a thing, with Luffy showing off his Conqueror's Haki. But it's kind of just set up for the next arc, really. It's a little transitional arc, if you will, which is not bad, but, you know, I like the Island of Women being pretty cool. You get to see a lot of big butts and titties. Big fan of big butts and titties. We'll put that in B for big butts and titties. But it is in the Amazon Lily arc that we find out that Ace, Luffy's brother, is in trouble. This man has been imprisoned by the government and is sentenced to execution, so Luffy gets his ass ready to save his ass. I said that really stupidly. Hey guys, dummy fucking moron here. But this leads us into the Impel Down arc, where Luffy raids the Impel Down prison to get Ace out of the shithole on his own, completely on his own, without his crew. And I thought it was pretty cool. You get to see the return of a lot of great characters. Bon Clay comes back, what a fucking legend. Mr. 2 with his cum fruit again, he's back, and he's a good guy this time, which is even cooler. This is our introduction to Jinbei, the absolute fucking legend who would later join the crew. And you get returns of villains like Crocodile, and even new characters like Ivanka, whatever the fuck her name is, or his name is. I don't want to misgender this fucking fictional character that doesn't exist, but whatever the fuck they are. That cracker. Impel Down's cool, but you can kind of tell that it's like, again, it's more of a transition to get into the war itself, which is probably one of the best arcs, if I'm being completely honest, and I think everybody would agree with me. So we'll put Impel Down in motherfucking B. Then we have Marineford. Need I say more? S tier. My only criticism of Marineford is the fact that the rest of the crew isn't in it. Because I feel like that's one of the things that makes One Piece is the fact that it's the whole crew coming together doing all this shit. But it's just Luffy and like a couple of his allies, which, you know, not to say they aren't unfamiliar allies, because we know them from the previous arc and from when they were previously shown. And it's cool to see all like the admirals return and all the Shichibukai, everybody's there, all the big players are there, but the main crew isn't there, which I feel like is like, it kind of takes away from a lot of the magic of One Piece. But even so, it's one of the best arcs. Spoilers. Spoiler alert. You knew there's going to be spoilers in here, but I'm going to fucking spoil it anyways. But when Ace fucking dies and he says that fucking line, my heart fucking sank. Just like his heart sank to the bottom of the ocean when he got punched out. Then we have the post-war arc, which is, again, just kind of a transitional arc, just kind of leading us into the time skip, or what would eventually be the time skip. I like the time skip stuff. It introduces us to what everybody's going to be doing during the time skip. We get to see what everybody has been up to, which is fun, but not exactly the best, and we'll put that in C. But then we have the time skip. 2 years have passed, the gang is all here. We have Return to Sabaody. They all meet up in Sabaody 2 years later. We get to see everybody's redesigns. Everybody's got new drip, new fucking titty. It's great. But again, it's just kind of a transitional arc. But it is super, super satisfying to see the crew all together again after them being apart for so long. But we're going to call it a B tier just because it's just a transitional arc. Next is Fishman Island. Visually speaking, I think Fishman Island is my favorite island, like aesthetically. I just love the look of it. But this arc kind of sets up a lot of what's to come in some of the later arcs. It sets up Big Mom being somebody they're gonna have to fight later, which they eventually do in Whole Cake Island and Wano. We learn some lore stuff via Shirahoshi, whatever her fucking name is, and her siren song, whatever the fuck it is. I think one of my biggest criticisms about Fishman Island is that it's very clearly about like racism, and it's not very subtle about that. I'm very much against racism. Unless it's funny, but I thought it was kind of heavy-handed with what it was trying to say. The big fight at the end, it was kind of just a big power fantasy, just kind of to just display how strong everybody's gotten since the time skip. There's kind of really no struggle in the majority of this conflict. It's still kind of a fun arc. I do enjoy it. I'd put it in B though. Alright, if this battery dies, I'm gonna be pissed. If this battery dies, I will shit and came. But now we're getting into the real good stuff, because now we have the Punk Hazard arc, which is really the real setup of kind of the remainder of the series thus far. Punk Hazard, we have them going to Punk Hazard, discovering that there's these illegal experiments going on, trying to make artificial devil fruits. We meet fucking Caesar Clown, this fucking motherfucker. We get the introduction of the Pirate Alliance, where Luffy teams up with Trafalgar Law, and they form an alliance to take down Kaido, which sets up again the next like fucking 8 years of the series, which is wild. They've only just recently paid this whole thing off with the conclusion of Wano. It's wild how much this arc sets up. But aside from that, it's pretty nutty. I like the body swap stuff in this arc. I'm just a sucker for body swap because it's just a great trope, I think. Honestly, yeah, let's put that in B. Yeah, we'll call it. It's pretty B tier. I'll tell you what. After that is the next major arc, the Dressrosa arc, where the gang goes to Dressrosa to stop the production of Smile Fruits and to fight one of the drippiest characters of all time, Don Quixote do Flamingo. This dude is so dripped out, it's not even funny, bro. This dude is icy. This cracker have the icy no me, because this cracker is icy. He's dripping. He's so cold, my guy. He's one of the coldest motherfuckers of all time, bro. This arc is really great, but it's really I think this is probably one of the first times where I felt that an arc was kind of excessively long. I'm gonna be honest, I kind of struggled to care about like Rebecca and her whole plot line with her father. The toy stuff was kind of like aesthetically really weird. I feel like it clashed a little bit with the rest of Dressrosa's kind of Latin aesthetic. Arriba. Fucking, am I racist yet? I thought Doflamingo's backstory was cool. I thought Law's backstory was really cool. This is the introduction of one of Luffy's coolest power-ups, Gear 4, and I am actually so mad that I was spoiled by Gear 4. You want to know how I was spoiled by Gear 4? Gear 4 was spoiled for me by this image right here that I just saw randomly on Twitter one time. If I hadn't seen One Piece at all, I would not have known what the hell this was. But since I had read One Piece and I had known a little bit about it by the time I saw this, I was like, what the fuck? Is this Gear 4? What is this? I'm angry. I got spoiled by a dumb SpongeBob meme. Kill me, please. Other than that, though, Dressrosa is pretty good, though it is a little bit on the longer side, and I felt that it was a little bit too long. Whole Cake Island, I would honestly say, is probably one of my favorite arcs, simply because I love Sanji. He's one of my favorite characters, and we get so much Sanji backstory in it. It's just I love it. The aesthetic of the island seems kind of stupid to me. Like, I don't know, I just don't like the whole candy fucking aesthetic. It doesn't seem very realistic to me. Granted, this is a world where crackers can stretch 20,000 feet and have fruits that give you magic powers and make your penis shrink. I didn't really much care for Big Mom's backstory. I thought it was kind of like, you know, why bother trying to make us sympathize with this character who we kind of already don't like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no reason for us to sympathize with Big Mom, so I found it kind of hard to sympathize with her, even with her backstory involved. I liked Pudding. Pudding was kind of wholesome. Jinbei comes back again where you think he's gonna join the crew, and he's like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna deuce the fuck out at the end for no reason also. Again, I also think Whole Cake Island kind of suffers from, again, not the whole crew being there. When we only have half the crew here, the other half has gone off to Wano already off screen, and I feel like they don't really do a lot with the characters that they do have, you know what I mean? Like, I understand Nami being there because she's Nami and Sanji is obsessed with her. I understand Luffy being there because he's Luffy and this is one of his crew members he's trying to get back. But like, why the fuck is Brook here? What does Brook have to do with any of this? I said earlier in the video that it's one of my favorite arcs. I wouldn't quite say that anymore, but I do like it. It's kind of epic. And second to last, we have the Reverie, or Leveille, I don't know how they say it. All the governments of all the main islands come together at the government capital and have a big meeting. I thought this was really cool in a world building sense, because it makes sense that, you know, you'd have all of these different islands coming together to make worldwide laws. It makes sense why there's a world government to begin with, and it kind of explains how all these little governments exist with the world government looming over them. And it's cool. It's nice to see all, like, Luffy's former friends come together. Like, you see Shirahoshi meets Rebecca, meets fucking Vivi. Then you have this whole the whole other subplot of it where the Revolutionary Army is kind of just sneaking in, and Sabo's involved, and he gets captured at the end, which we don't actually realize until Wano, so I kind of just spoiled that for you. Suck my fucking dick. How did I forget this? How did I forget talking about Sabo during the post-war arc in Dressrosa? How did I forget that? How do I forget Sabo? What the fuck? Fuck is wrong with you? Dare call yourself a fucking straw hat? I was kind of annoyed about how built up this was in the manga. Like, when I was reading the manga, throughout Whole Cake Island, they were just kind of like building up at the very end. Like, there were all these teasers and advertisements like, oh, the Reverie is coming. The Reverie is about to happen. And then it happens, and it's like, oh, this was cute. Yeah, I feel like this is just kind of set up for a lot of stuff that's going to be happening from the future of the series after Wano, which we, again, are obviously yet to see, but we'll put her in C. And most recently, we have the Wano arc, which I'm pretty sure is the longest arc in all of One Piece, and possibly all of Shonen, if we're being completely honest. This shit has been going on for like 4 years or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers. The real numbers will be on screen somewhere. It's very Japanese inspired. You can tell in just like the storytelling itself, where it's split into arcs like an old fucking Japanese stage play or whatever the fuck. My biggest problem with Wano, though, is not necessarily that it's long, but it's long for reasons that I don't care about. You know what I mean? Like, there's all this stuff going on in Wano, like all these intergovernment fucking conflicts and shit, and all this stuff going on with characters that you just don't care about. The stuff that I do care about, like all the Kaido stuff, all the stuff with the Straw Hats, all the stuff with the, you know, fighting against the Beast Pirates, all the Smile Fruit stuff is pretty cool. It's just like the background stuff that goes on, like with fucking all these other cunts that I just don't care about. Other than that, the whole arc is fucking fire. The arc is flames, bro. Especially in the anime, where the animation just takes a huge step up. It's wild. We get introduced to Yamato, the absolute trans icon that he is. We get some insane character development for Momonosuke, and Jinbei finally officially joins the crew as the helmsman, which I fucking absolutely love. Love that guy. Love Jinbei. He's a legend. Oh, and how could I fucking forget spoilers for the manga, because obviously the anime hasn't covered this yet, but spoilers. But fucking Luffy unlocking Gear 5 and being revealed to be the fabled Joy Boy is absolutely insane. I think that might be one of the best chapters in all of Shonen history, just because of that. It goes so hard. Wano, absolute motherfucking S tier, baby. But that's it. That's the One Piece arc tier list. That's my tier list. Let me know what you think. I'm objectively correct, by the way, and if you disagree with me, I hate you personally, and I hope that you die. Now let's get to some sappy gay shit. I usually never notice the exact moment when a piece of media clicks with me. I'll recognize that I like it, but I can't always figure out the exact moment that I did. One Piece is the exception because I can instantly identify the exact scene that made me love it, and I'm sure many of you already know exactly what I'm about to talk about because it's likely the same scene that made you love it as well. The scene in question is in the middle of the Arlong Park arc, which focuses mostly on Nami. Until this point in the manga, there's been a pretty clear format. Introduce a character, the character gets a few chapters dedicated to their tragic backstory, character overcomes their problem with the help of the Straw Hats, and the character joins the crew. The only character thus far that this didn't apply to was Nami, who had not yet gotten a backstory. Nami was always portrayed as a conniving thief, somewhat untrustworthy, but very capable of taking care of herself. The events of Arlong Park put her into a situation where, for the first time, she has no idea how to get out of it, and it shows the audience a side of her that completely recontextualizes how the audience views her and her actions. In the most pivotal scene, she breaks down crying in the street, and in a moment of vulnerability, she asks Luffy. Without hesitation and without even knowing what the problem is, Luffy gives Nami his hat, shouts out, and walks off, only uttering the words to the other Straw Hats as they go off to fight Arlong. The reason this scene got me was because it showed that even though the Straw Hats had only known each other for a short time, they all have a mutual trust in each other and will do anything for each other, Luffy especially. Despite all that Nami had done to betray the group in this arc, the crew still go off to help her because she's still their friend, and it's not treated as a joke in any way. The scene is handled with a level of maturity that I didn't really expect of One Piece at that point in the story. I would have expected Usopp to whine and bitch out, Sanji to start simping, and Zoro to have some snarky comment, but none of that is here and it's played completely straight. Plus, the scene is just peak Luffy. He doesn't care about the context of the situation, all he knows is that you made his navigator and his friend cry, and for that, you gotta pay. When I first read this scene and got to this panel, I audibly went, "Let's go!" With just a few lines of dialogue and a few panels, this scene got me excited in a way that some fully animated sequences haven't managed to do. This is the scene that made me fall in love with One Piece, and there are plenty of other scenes like it throughout the series, like the crew leaving Alabasta, making a stand for Robin at Enies Lobby, Luffy changing the whole world just to save Ace, and pretty much any other time that the crew comes together against impossible odds to fight for their friends. It's scenes like these that represent the camaraderie of the crew, and that's really what One Piece is all about. It's great that the series has these intricate political plot lines and deep characters and all that fancy shit, but at the end of the day, it's a story about dreams, freedom, and most importantly, friendship. It's often joked about that when the series inevitably ends, Luffy is gonna find the One Piece and discover that the real treasure is the friends he made along the way, that whole meme. But if I'm being completely honest, I would not mind if that were the case. The series is nearing its final stretch right now, with the Whole Cake Island and Wano arcs bringing the Straw Hats really close to their goal of reaching the end of the Grand Line, and Oda confirming that the saga after Wano will be the final one. Though considering the length of some recent arcs, I wouldn't be surprised if Oda somehow milks another 10 years out of it. And I wouldn't mind that one bit, because the more time we get with these characters, with their friendship, and with their dreams, the better that inevitable final chapter will be. One Piece. It's the name of the treasure in the Grand Line, but it's also an epic tale the likes of which the world has never seen and will likely never see again. I can't think of a single series out there that has been going on for this long and has been this consistently good. It's not every day that you see a series trending on Twitter alongside peak fiction, though I don't know if I quite agree with that yet. One Piece has definitely become one of my favorite series of all time, and if you haven't seen or read it, I'd highly recommend it. Much like my fat cock, it may be long, but it is oh so worth it. If you're a One Piece fan, then I'd be glad to call you my Nakama. Howdy. Keno yume o kakiatsume sagashimono sagashi ni yuku no sa. One Piece. Rashiban nante 渋滞のもと熱に侵され舵を取るのさほくりかぶってた宝の地図も確かめたのなら伝説じゃない個人的な嵐は誰かのバイオリズムの過程思い過ごせばいいありったけの夢をかき集め探し物探しに行くのさポケットのコインそれと You wanna be my friend We are on the cruise We are
The One Piece! The One Piece is real! Hey, it's me, your boy, Monkey DeLuffy here to tell you about patreon.com/MattCMG, where you can support this YouTube channel for money. Money me. Give me money. Or if you don't have money, like the poor fucking schmuck you are, then click the like button on the video. That'd be pretty epic. Or subscribe if you want to see more of this shit, because subscribing lets me know that you want more of this, and I can give that to you, just like I can give you my cock if you are of age. I will not rest until every single human being on this planet has seen a cockpiece edit and liked it. I will not rest. We need more cockpiece edits. Where's the penis? Bring on the penis. Como no. Be a good cocker. Epic style. Back to the video. Here's an ad. Give me money.
We found the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto Shippuden is up next on Toonami.
Next of the big three is the ever-iconic Naruto, created by Masashi Kishimoto in 1999. The manga ran for 15 years and received an anime adaptation in 2002, and has since become one of the most recognizable anime of all time. The manga is split into two parts, separated by a time skip, and the anime does the same, with part 1 of the manga being adapted into the original Naruto series, and part 2 being adapted into Naruto Shippuden. I'ma keep it a buck with you, if you haven't at least heard of Naruto before, you haven't just been living under a rock, motherfucker, you are the rock. You know, Naruto is like the anime, if you know what I'm saying. Like, whenever you see anime memes like this or this, chances are Naruto is the thing they're talking about. The series has etched itself into the hearts and minds of weeaboos the world around, and is without a doubt one of the most popular anime of all time. But before we get too deep into things, a story for you all. For the longest time, I was actually really against watching Naruto for a really stupid reason. So back in high school, I was in an Xbox Live party with a friend of mine and his other friend that I didn't really know that well. I don't remember what the hell we were talking about, but I expressed interest in Naruto. I said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I've been thinking about getting into Naruto lately." At the time, anime was seen as cringe, so anybody who openly liked it was treated as a freak, and in many cases, rightfully so. Upon learning of my potential interest in Naruto, this other friend that I didn't know that well sarcastically compared me to one of said freaks, and I thought to myself, yeah, you probably right, and I never considered it again. For years, I was against watching Naruto because I had associated it with some gross losers at my school that I didn't want to be associated with, and any discourse that I had seen around it online had been pretty negative, but upon actually watching it, I can certainly say that I have been missing out. 12 years ago, a legendary beast known as the Nine-Tailed Fox threatened to destroy the Hidden Leaf Village. The most powerful ninja and leader of the village, the 4th Hokage, was able to seal the beast away into the body of a newborn baby, saving the village in the process. Fast forward to the present, and that baby is now a young boy, Naruto Uzumaki. Because of the circumstances of his birth, Naruto is what is known as a Jinchuriki, and the village shuns and ignores him for his entire orphan childhood. With no friends, family, or any real connections, there's only one thing that keeps Naruto from completely losing hope. Even though he isn't very good at the ninja arts, Naruto's goal is to become the next Hokage and to gain the respect of his village. The series follows Naruto and his friends as they train to become ninja and discover the evils that lurk just outside their village. These evils come in many forms, but the main threat is the Akatsuki, a group of rogue ninja who seek to collect all 9 Jinchuriki to start a war between the great nations. But before we get too crazy, and because I had nowhere better to put this joke that I've already fucking done in this video, bro, can we talk about these openings? Let's talk about these openings. Nothing but bangers! Heroes Comeback, Bars, Bluebird, Intercourse, Hakuna fucking Matata, or whatever the fuck it's called, Shonen as fuck, Rocks, shit kinda rocks. The animation for New Song has no right to be as good as it is. That's nutty. Everybody's dancing and shit. They're just straight schmoovin'. Silhouette. Need I say more? Bro, even the OST fucks, dude. When that when that joint hits, bro, you know shit's about to go down. But anywho, getting into the characters, Naruto himself is clearly meant to be the emotional core of the story. His name is literally the fucking title, kind of a revolutionary concept, who'da fucking thunk. I think Naruto is a great character, but it definitely took me a while for me to really resonate with him. He's very much your typical shonen protagonist, right? He's loud, brash, eats excessive amounts of food, and is really dumb, but makes up for all of that in combat and his devotion to his friends. The standard stuff. He can be endearing at times, but is otherwise pretty generic, though that's not at all to say bad. At first, he he's very annoying and childish, which makes sense because he is a child, right? As the series progresses and the years go on, he starts to mature a lot, and he loses a lot of the annoying childish traits that he once had, but without losing any of that hopeful naivete that made him so endearing to begin with. He becomes almost unrecognizable by the end. Like, dude, we literally watch this kid grow up. We see him in every state of his life, so the sense of progression with him is fucking insane. One of the defining things about Naruto as a character is his backstory. Like I mentioned in the synopsis, due to being a Jinchuriki, Naruto was shunned by his entire village growing up. No friends, no family, he's truly alone, and this desire to not be ignored anymore is what truly drives him to fulfill his goal of becoming Hokage. I really felt this shit because I know exactly what it feels like to be ignored for seemingly no reason. Sometimes it doesn't matter how nice or friendly you are, it doesn't matter if you're confident or fun to be around. Sometimes there are people who just repel other people and are ignored, and there's nothing you can really do about that. And this isn't even like an incel fucking edgelord thing, it's just something that happens to some people with no rhyme or reason. The pain of being alone is a big thing for Naruto's character as well as others, and is a major theme of the series. How you deal with that pain is completely up to you, but having goals and finding others like you is a good step forward. Naruto really values friendship. It's literally his main drive for the entire series, but you can't talk about Naruto Uzumaki without talking about his rival and self-proclaimed best friend, Sasuke motherfucking Uchiha. That's his real legal middle name, by the way. It's Sasuke motherfucking Uchiha. That's real. That's actually real. As the last remaining member of the Uchiha clan, Sasuke becomes a ninja to avenge his family by taking down the guy who killed them, his older brother, Itachi. After being placed into the same ninja squad as Naruto, it's only natural that Sasuke's desire for strength and power would clash with Naruto's similar goal, and the two become rivals, constantly pushing each other to get stronger. But unlike Naruto, who starts off as an inexperienced oaf, Sasuke is top of the class, with a natural talent for everything shinobi and a natural-born advantage with his Sharingan, his clan's visual jutsu that allows him to analyze his opponent's movements. You know, he's the edgy guy, right? You know, often smug and condescending to anybody he deems weaker than him. At first, he wants nothing to do with Squad 7, he just wants to get stronger and fulfill his goal, but over time during the first few arcs, he grows to genuinely befriend his squad mates, specifically Naruto. However, a conflict would eventually grow within Sasuke. Does he stay in the Leaf Village competing with Naruto and eventually feel stuck in his shadow, or does he go off and find more immediate methods of gaining power? He chooses the latter, and goes off to team up with Orochimaru, one of the series' main villains. With Sasuke having betrayed the Leaf Village, it becomes one of Naruto's goals to bring Sasuke back. They are gay! Sasuke was definitely one of my favorite characters, but not necessarily because of his backstory or his dynamics with the other characters. Granted, that stuff is very good, but it's because he's a fucking badass. The classic, edgy, mysterious anime guy, right? I am so fucking glad I never watched this show as a kid because I 100% would have adopted this personality. You think my shit's bad now? Imagine the alternate MattCMG reality. Anyways, the reason I bring up Sasuke in the middle of talking about Naruto's character is because the two are deeply intertwined. The dynamic between Naruto and Sasuke is one of the most important things in the show, and is woven directly into their arcs and into the story. Sasuke denies friendship and humanity, believing that it holds him back, but Naruto embraces that stuff, knowing that it's those very ties that make him more powerful. You know, that and the literal fucking demon that lives within him, but that's beside the point.
There's a demon in me.
It's true, he has semen in him.
Their friendship is pivotal to the series. Naruto doesn't care what Sasuke has done and just wants his friend back, while Sasuke actively tries to forget his friendship with Naruto, which is ironic because he never would have gotten as far as he did without him. Sasuke has to accept that Naruto is important to him whether he still wants his friendship or not. These two parallel each other in a really interesting way that Sasuke kinda spells out during their original fight. They both know the pain of being alone, but which is worse? Is it Naruto, who never had any friends or family at all and suffers because of it, or is it Sasuke, who suffers because he had those very ties that were taken away from him? These differing ideas of loneliness and the pain that comes with it determines how they deal with that pain. Sasuke pushes people away, while Naruto embraces his relationships and is even eager to form new ones. While the series ultimately settles on Naruto's vision being right, because why the fuck wouldn't it, you can still see how Sasuke comes to the conclusions that he does. While Naruto's ideology is very in your face, things are surprisingly nuanced when Sasuke is thrown into the mix. The fact that Naruto never gives up on Sasuke is, I think, the best indicator of this, since he has every reason to resent his red-eyed acquaintance for everything that he's done, but he doesn't because he knows what he's feeling and knows the best way to help him. Sasuke experiences firsthand that pushing people away just causes him more pain, so to find someone like Naruto who refuses to allow that to happen is the thing that ultimately brings him back. That and the fact that they're gay homos who fuck each other because they're gay. That is so getting cut, dude. Moving on, the third member of Squad 7 is Sakura Haruno. At first, her only personality trait is that she has a vapid crush on Sasuke, but later finds a purpose in becoming a medical ninja. It's been a common meme in the anime community that Sakura is useless, but you know what? I don't see it. Fuck it, Sakura defense mode. How could anybody possibly say that Sakura is useless when her abilities as a doctor have saved the crew's ass on numerous occasions? Naruto would have probably died after awakening the Nine Tails against Orochimaru, but Sakura saved his ass. She was the first member of the main cast to defeat a member of the Akatsuki by beating Sasori. She serves as a combat medic during the Fourth Great Shinobi War, presumably saving countless lives. She literally saves Naruto's life again by shoving her hand into his chest and pumping his heart with her hand. Tell me she's useless again, I fucking dare ya. Now you wanna talk about useless? No, Ino is fucking useless. This bitch does everything Sakura does, but undoubtedly worse. But I won't go on that tangent. Anyways, Sakura is actually an incredibly important character because she's part of what drives Naruto to bring Sasuke back. When Sasuke first left the village, Naruto promised her that he would bring him back, and he still aims to make good on that promise years later. Sakura realized that this promise was driving Naruto to do some very risky things, so she looks for a reason to stop him, even if that meant lying to his face. I actually think the scene where she confesses her love for Naruto is really interesting and somewhat misunderstood because it obviously wasn't true, but it did come from a genuine place. She did lie to Naruto intentionally, and it is a major dick move, and I can see why people wouldn't like her because of it, but she only does so in order to not feel guilty about forcing him to break his promise. She still loves Sasuke despite all that he's done, but she lost hope that he would ever come around, so she tries to take matters into her own hands, but knows that Naruto will be in the way because of his promise. Naruto denies this advance because he can tell that she's lying and doesn't want her to be dishonest with herself. Sakura's love for Sasuke may have started as just some childhood crush, but it does evolve into a genuine love that drives her to want to help Naruto and friends get him back, which thereby drives her to become a better ninja and a better person. And I don't think that she gets enough credit for that. She is definitely the weakest link of Squad 7 though, since she often takes a backseat to her teammates despite being just as important narratively, and oftentimes she can be written like absolute shit. That being said, I think a lot of the hate for Sakura is unwarranted to the point where I was genuinely surprised that I didn't hate her upon first watching it. The leader of Squad 7 is the mysterious copy ninja, Kakashi Hatake. With a Sharingan of his own, Kakashi has the ability to copy his enemy's jutsu, making him one of the most powerful characters on the show and undoubtedly one of the coolest. Dude is such a fucking vibe, bro. Like, he's this super competent ninja. Dude can fuck people up, but he's also just like big chilling most of the time, like reading fucking erotic porn novels or whatever. My guy is literally looking at porn on the job. What a fucking sigma. As the squad sensei, he serves a mentor role to the kids, mostly Naruto and Sasuke, in varying capacities. In fact, I really like how he parallels Naruto and Sasuke in different ways. Having the Sharingan like Sasuke makes him the perfect master for him, and the backstory for how he gets his Sharingan gives him a bit of a personal connection to Sasuke. Kakashi was also a student of the 4th Hokage, who in case it wasn't painfully obvious to you upon immediately seeing him, is Naruto's father, so it's very fitting that he trains Naruto. This all gets into some thematic stuff that I'll get into later, so I'll leave it at that for now. But Kakashi, dude's the fucking homie. Never try to trick me with that fake out death again, you sons of bitches. Now let's get into some characters from outside of the main squad. Within seconds of first meeting Rock Lee, I just knew that this dude was my favorite character. He's got all of the determination of Naruto, but is significantly less annoying and is actually really endearing. His whole thing is that unlike the other ninja, Lee doesn't use any ninjutsu or genjutsu, only taijutsu, which is basically just their version of regular martial arts. He only fights with his physical strength and doesn't use chakra, and as a result, he trains harder than anybody, including Naruto. You guys know by now, I absolutely love characters like this, characters who have to train twice as hard just to catch up with everybody else. When the training weights come off, shit just got real, bro. His relationship with Guy Sensei is also a big part of his character. When they first meet, Lee is ambitious about being a ninja despite being behind his peers, and Guy sees that ambition and harnesses it to help Lee better himself. Lee really looks up to Guy, and Guy really cares for Lee. It's wholesome as fuck. But, hold on, side tangent about Guy. This guy's name is Might Guy, and his dad's name is Might Die. That motherfucker is dead. When Lee is injured during the Chunin exams and is told he might never be able to work as a ninja again, it really fucks him up because that's like his whole life. All he's ever wanted to do was be a splendid ninja, and he's told that he can't be. So what does he do? He sulks for a little while, but with some help from Guy, he starts training again and gets his groove back, and I think that's really inspiring. Dude is a treat anytime he's on screen. I get unironically excited whenever he shows up, so you might imagine that I was fucking pissed to find out that he gets the shaft in Shippuden. Big Lee fan, just wish we saw more of him. I guess there's the Rock Lee spin-off thing that I haven't seen. Maybe I'll check that out to get my fill of Rock Lee. Wait, that sounded gay. I find that each of the squads we're introduced to have at least one character that I liked, and for Team 10, that character is Shikamaru Nara. Wait, they really called Team 10?
It's every day, bro, with that Disney Channel flow. 5 mil on YouTube in 6 months, never done before.
Anyways, I actually didn't like Shikamaru at first. I thought he was generic and boring, but then he started getting more focus, and I was like, damn. This motherfucker kinda slaps. Shikamaru is first introduced as smart, but lazy. The dude is a fucking genius for being 12 years old or whatever, but he's so lazy that he'd rather sit on his ass than use his brain for anything. Motherfucker is just straight up the gifted child, bro. His big brain plays a role in his combat style, with his shadow possession jutsu allowing him to restrict and control his enemies at the cost of leaving himself vulnerable to attack. He's a natural tactician, so he's able to play around this, and it's only natural that he's the first of his class to become Chunin. On the flip side though, Shikamaru's laziness is a big part of his character, and part of his arc is learning to care about shit. Now, I'm not saying I'm some genius or anything, but I can definitely relate to the feeling of being too smart for your own good. Sometimes you just know too much about the world or you overthink anything, but not in like a gay fucking anxiety, mental health kind of way, but in a way where you feel like you've kind of just seen it all already, so it becomes hard to give a shit about anything. Combine this with his first mission as a Chunin being a failure, giving him massive confidence issues, and that shit starts to eat away at him. The Akatsuki suppression mission arc made me love Shikamaru, because it's where he finally confronts this part of himself and finds something to fight for, and he became one of my favorite characters because of it. They just fucking made the show Shikamaru Shippuden for a minute. Dickamaru, that's what he calls himself when he dicks fucking what's-her-name down. You guys think Shikamaru calls himself Dickamaru when he's dicking down Tamari? My favorite character from Squad 8 is none other than the Kudere Queen, Hinata Hyuga. As many of you probably already know, Hinata's primary character trait is that she's timid and shy, with her crush on Naruto motivating her to push herself and become stronger. But don't get it twisted, this ain't some shipping bait bullshit, because as the heir to the Hyuga clan, Hinata has expectations to live up to, but isn't confident enough to live up to them. Bro, I fucking love Hinata, dude. She's a wholesome character, there's just no way around it. Any time when she stands up for herself or her friends is so effective because you're just not used to her coming out of her shell like that. My favorite example is in the Pain arc, when she comes to Naruto's defense and professes her love for him before getting the absolute shit beaten out of her. I also like that her crush on Naruto isn't as vapid as, say, Sakura's crush on Sasuke. Like, it's not just, I think you're hot, or anything like that. You know, it comes from a place of genuine admiration, and it pushes her to work hard. She wants to better herself for herself to become somebody that Naruto can admire back. It's really wholesome, and I fucking love it. Big Hinata stan. Taking things out of the Leaf Village, one of my favorite characters was Gaara, an edgelord from the Sand Village. He's first introduced as an antagonist during the Chunin exams. You know, they've really built him up as this big threat that the gang's gonna have to fight, but we later find out that he's not really evil at all, and later becomes an ally and friend to Naruto. Gaara is essentially the sand version of Naruto, but with a major difference. They both have the spirits of these deadly monsters living inside of them and were shunned their entire lives because of it. But the difference between the two is that Naruto overcame this through making friends and finding people he cared about, while Gaara just festered in his loneliness. He's basically Doomer Naruto, and I could relate to him way more for that reason. I like how we see him come to the same conclusions that Naruto does through their interactions with each other, serving as a glimpse into how things can go with Sasuke. Naruto is one of the only people that can truly understand Gaara's pain both as a Jinchuriki and as a social outcast, so it's fitting that it becomes a goal of Naruto's to help our dry-ass friend. I wasn't a huge fan of the first arc of Shippuden where Gaara loses his tailed beast because it made him way less cool in my opinion. I mean, he's still a fucking badass edgelord and I love him, but it's a little bit cringe that they depowered him like that when that would have been way cooler if he kept that shit. They do remedy this by having him become the Kazekage, meaning he's probably the strongest ninja in the Hidden Sand, so at least my boy gets some action as opposed to some other characters that get sidelined as the series progresses. Guaranteed he's never seen a moist vagina because nobody in the Sand Village is moist. It's just not real. As for villains, Naruto has two main ones, the first being Orochimaru. As a former member of the Leaf Village and one of the legendary Sannin, Orochimaru's goal is to learn every jutsu with the intention of obtaining a jutsu to grant him immortality and to destroy the Hidden Leaf. I'm gonna be honest with you, Orochimaru didn't do it for me. He's a serviceable villain, I guess, you know, he's somebody to fight and all that, but he's not very complex or interesting to me. He has this whole backstory where he was friends with Jiraiya and Tsunade, but it doesn't really go anywhere. His motives for destroying the leaf make very little sense because he's just mad that the third Hokage made him stop his inhumane experiments. Like, yeah, dude, he's totally in the wrong there. That's totally an irrational conclusion for him to come to. Combined with the fact that this dude is just overpowered as fuck for the majority of his tenure, and you've got a villain that doesn't really do it for me. The only time I liked him was when Sasuke killed his ass. Just not a fan. I'm an even bigger non-fan of Kabuto, Orochimaru's right-hand man. This dude is so fucking annoying, bro. All he fucking does is sit around and simp for this snake fuck, and then he runs around all smug like he owns the fucking place, but nobody ever puts him on his ass. Even when he's defeated by Itachi, he still has this smug fucking look on his face. Literally, his only emotion is condescension. I fucking hate him. Like, I know you're supposed to hate him because he's a villain after all, but I don't give a shit. He has such a punchable face. Fuck him. The real main villain of Naruto is kind of a spoiler. In fact, the show's final villain changes like 4 fucking times throughout the last arc. It's a little bit wild, but I'll be focusing on Toby for now so as to not spoil it for those of you who don't want to know the twist. All fucking 5 of them. I will, however, be spoiling this in the tier list section, so suck my wet asshole. As the secret leader of the Akatsuki, Toby's goal is to collect all of the tailed beasts to summon the 10 tails and become a Jinchuriki in order to control the entire world with a super Sharingan known as the Infinite Tsukuyomi. I like Toby a lot better than Orochimaru because he's essentially the same concept done way better. While Orochimaru's motivations made very little sense, Toby's are purposefully left in the dark so that there's an aura of mystery around why he's even doing this. You get the impression that he's this conniving evil genius where he's just setting plans in motion like fucking decades before he intends to implement them. Dude overtakes the Akatsuki and manipulates all of its members into following him and manufactures an entire war with every nation involved in order to distract them and enact his real plan. Dude's a fucking maniac and I love it. His true identity is a big mystery for most of the series. In fact, they reveal it properly like 3 times and it still fucks you up every time. Plus, the dude is just overpowered as fuck in all the right ways. You know, with Orochimaru, it's clear that there are ninja out there that could beat him if they wanted to, but with Toby, this isn't the case. None of our main cast can step to him, nobody even comes close, and with the aura of mystery around him, you never really get an idea of how powerful he truly is, so it's scary whenever he pulls up. Love me this type of villain, this kind of shit fucks. I relegated this section to just the characters I had the most to say about because I can't reasonably talk about every single character because Naruto's cast is fucking huge, but unlike One Piece where I liked pretty much every character, Naruto's cast was pretty hit or miss. Like, they'll introduce a character that I like alongside one that I hate or don't care much for. It's really just 50-50 like that. Like Rock Lee, okay, cool, great, love that guy. Neji, didn't care for him. Shikamaru is great, but Ino and Choji are fucking annoying. Their personalities are literally just girl and fat. Dataro was kinda cool with his fucking creepy hand mouths that he definitely used to jack off, but Sasori was fucking lame in my opinion. A lot of the females are kind of horribly written with the exception of Tsunade, Hinata, and maybe Tamari. There were other characters that I liked but felt either didn't get enough screen time or just didn't have enough of a character for me to really latch onto them. You know, I really liked Tenten. She's a fun character when she gets any focus at all, but she doesn't really have much of a character. The most substantial moments for her were in filler episodes, which I think says a lot. You know, I thought Sai's social ineptitude was charming, but it's such a background thing for the most part that I have a hard time saying that I truly like it. I think the large cast is one of Naruto's biggest problems. The show is so focused on Naruto and Sasuke's friendship and the relationships that parallel and mirror them that they don't seem to ever have time for the side characters that they spent all of this time setting up in the pre-time skip era. I liked Lee and Gaara, but the stuff that made me like them was all in the first part of the series since they don't get much material in Shippuden. However, despite my gripes with some of them, the relationships between these characters are pivotal to the themes of the series. And aside from friendship, another of Naruto's major themes is that of generations and how they influence and parallel each other. This is best shown with the relationship between a student and their master being shown all throughout the Naruto timeline. Okay, so you've got the third Hokage who trained Jiraiya and the other Sannin. Jiraiya trained Minato, the fourth Hokage, who trained Kakashi, who trained Naruto, who kinda trained Konohamaru. Each student learns important life lessons from their master that they pass on to their students, which can be seen with Kakashi learning from Minato to never leave a comrade behind, symbolized by the bell game, and with Naruto carrying on the peaceful ideals of Jiraiya. This can even be seen in minor ways with secondary characters, such as how Shikamaru's team and their Ino-Shikacho formation represents the bond between their 3 families and carrying on that tradition for the next generation, and the Uchiha clan's Fireball Jutsu and the awakening of their Sharingan serves as a coming-of-age ritual for young members of the clan. But with the passing of generations, the new generation will always inherit the sins and mistakes of the previous. Orochimaru and Pain separately attack the Leaf for reasons they settled on long before Naruto and friends were born, but they still end up caught in the crossfire and have to deal with the aftermath. Tsunade is chosen to be the 5th Hokage and is burdened with this huge responsibility by virtue of being a descendant of the 1st and a student of the 3rd in a clear act of nepotism, which combined with the faulty leadership of the 3rd gives rise to political turmoil within the Leaf. Because of the actions of those that came before them, actions out of their control, the current generation is forced to fix the mistakes of their predecessors and create a better world for future generations. I'm sure Boruto tries to continue this theme, but I ain't watching that shit, fuck you. The past often mirrors the present in this show. You know, it's like poetry, they rhyme. Naruto and Sasuke are rivals turned friends in their youth, which we later see directly parallels the relationships between both Kakashi and Obito, as well as Jiraiya and Orochimaru. The former works in 2 ways. You know, there's a loner kid who forms a rivalry with an Uchiha, with Kakashi mirroring Naruto and Obito mirroring Sasuke, but this also works the other way around, with Obito's upbeat attitude and dream to become Hokage mirroring Naruto, while Kakashi's secretive and calculated nature fits Sasuke pretty well. As for the latter, the Sannin reflect Squad 7 pretty clearly. quickly. You've got the knucklehead Toad Sage who matures as he ages, the medical Kunoichi, and the edgy mysterious guy who goes rogue. Naruto's quest to help bring Sasuke back from the brink directly parallels Jiraiya feeling that he failed Orochimaru in a similar way. Like, it's not at all a secret that Squad 7 ends up being individually mentored by the Sannin that parallels them at one point or another. But the bulk of these character parallels can be easily seen with Naruto, since there are multiple characters who are intentionally written to exist as metaphorical alternate versions of him. Like I mentioned before, Gaara is what would happen if Naruto's isolation had more dire psychological effects on him. Sasuke is what would happen if Naruto knew his parents before losing them. Nagato and Obito are what would happen if Naruto went evil, and of course, Iruka serves as a prime example of how Naruto can overcome his feelings of isolation and become able to believe in himself. If there's a character who seems too similar to Naruto, chances are that's probably by design.
There's so much hate in this world. We have to rise above.
The world of Naruto, referred to by them as the Shinobi world, is kind of all over the place in both a good and a bad way. You really get to know most of the 5 great nations and some of these smaller villages pretty intimately, and similarly to One Piece, the political tensions between them drive much of the larger battles and interactions. The Hidden Leaf village is probably the one with the most focus, and aesthetically speaking, I fucking love it. It's this weird postmodern vibe where it's a village in name but has many more urban elements that I really love. Like, I would 100% live there. It'd be fucking lit. I don't know why there's a fucking Mount Rushmore of Hokage, but sure. The Leaf's relation to the sand is a crucial piece of the world building as well, with Gaara and friends originally being sent to destroy the Leaf, but through Naruto eventually become allies to the Leaf, which would later serve as the basis to unite the main villages under the united Shinobi forces and forging peace between them. The Hidden Rain village is probably even more important to the politics of the Shinobi world, with their isolationist nature being a result of the Third Great Ninja War, which Tobi and the Akatsuki later took advantage of to use the village as a base of operations in complete secrecy from the Leaf. The point is, each village and nation has its own past and history that is often intertwined with the other villages and shapes the world in such a way that each of them feel realistic. I hate to use the term lived in because it's so fucking overused, but it genuinely does feel that way most of the time. My biggest gripe with this is that we didn't really see much of the Mist, Cloud, and Stone villages. We occasionally see them, but only in brief scenes, and we don't really get an idea of what their lifestyles and cultures are like. On the other hand, there is like no sense of scale of this fucking place. Like, we see the map pretty frequently, and the whole continent seems pretty big, but sometimes it'll take them days to go from the Leaf to the sand, or like the Leaf to the Land of Waves, but then other times they can go from like the Hidden Cloud all the way to the Final Valley in a matter of hours, and that's being generous. The Fourth Great Shinobi War is the most egregious example of this, since sometimes an entire army will make it to one location pretty quickly, and other times they'll take a fucking eternity even though there's a much smaller area to work with. Granted, this is more so an issue with the pacing than it is with the world building itself, so it's not the biggest deal in the world. Moving on to other aspects of the world, here's a really petty criticism. So as you guys know, I'm an Avatar fan. I'm arguably the biggest Avatar fan in the world, totally not sucking my own dick here. Avatar is known for being really accurate with the real life lore that they put into the show, right? Well, and in Avatar, they have chi, which is their fictional energy, and then they have chakras, which are the pools of chi in the body. This was where I first learned about all of this stuff, and I later found out that it was based on real world beliefs. Naruto annoyed the absolute fuck out of me when they started calling the energy itself chakra, and then the chakras that were actually supposed to be chakras are actually like gates or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, stop this. You're not mentioning chi. There's brain, instrument brain. What? Now, I'm not saying it ripped off Avatar because Naruto obviously came first, but how is it that a bunch of Westerners got this right when the Easterners who live in that culture either got it completely wrong or just changed it on purpose for what I assume is just trying to be different for the sake of it? Same font though. Regardless though, I still like chakra as a magic system, and it's actually very similar to Avatar in a lot of ways. It's kinda generic, but they get really creative with what can be done with it. They play it kind of fast and loose with chakra, which might annoy people who want like strict consistency, but it makes for some really fun fights with moments that'll make you say what the fuck in the best way possible. Naruto seems to operate under the principle of introduce cool shit first, explain it later, which isn't exactly the best writing technique, but like also who cares when there's cool shit going on? That being said, this shit is not explained very well at all. Like, the whole elemental jutsu thing wasn't explained until after the time skip, more than halfway into the series, which is kind of ridiculous considering it's something that's been shown in the series multiple times by that point, though it's never really used as frequently as you might expect. Plus, in the exact scene where they explain that, Naruto asks about how shit like Choji's expansion jutsu works, and Kakashi straight up says, we'll explain that later, and I don't think that they ever do. Like, I can't decide if Kishimoto is being based or cringed for not explaining shit. As much as I criticize it though, I still found myself doing fucking jutsus in the corner and shit, so it certainly got the job done. However, Kishimoto also does this thing where he adds on to magic system lore that's already been established, like stacking new shit on top of pre-existing shit, and it kind of devalues the old stuff, and the power creep is kind of fucking insane. This especially becomes a problem when you combine it with the lack of screen time that some of these characters get, because many of these characters will go so long without without screen time that when they pop up again and we're told that they're stronger than last time, you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Like, okay, right, I can totally buy off-screen training, happens all the time in all kinds of different series. That's not the issue. The issue is that there's nothing that indicates that they've actually gotten stronger aside from beating dudes that we are told are stronger. Like, for example, let's look at Kiba, right? He's got the fang over fang and his big dog merge power, right? He has those moves by early Shippuden, then fast forward to the war where he hasn't really had any fights or anything like that, and the dude is still using the same moves with nothing that's indicated that he's gotten any stronger. Well, sure, you could argue that Kiba was never meant to get stronger since the narrative doesn't really call for it. This also happens with a ton of other characters, both important and supporting, and it makes them all feel stagnant. The bar only ever feels like it's being raised for Naruto and Sasuke, who get all of these epic power-ups and shit, so everybody else in comparison feels like they aren't growing. And this leads me into another thing, which is the whole reincarnation shit. Spoilers ahead, but in the final main arc, it's revealed that Naruto and Sasuke are the reincarnations of Ashura and Indra, the two sons of the Sage of the Six Paths, who's basically like the first ninja. This gives both of our boys some epic power-ups, but narratively, we just didn't need this. It doesn't really change anything to know where chakra comes from or how ninja came to be, because honestly, the series works completely fine without those things, proven by the fact that we didn't know any of this before the final arc. In fact, Kishimoto absolutely loves to retcon things by use of flashbacks, and sometimes it's cool because it could show us different perspectives on events that we've already seen, but other times it's completely unnecessary, and in the worst cases, detracts from the original event. And I'm not even talking about filler flashbacks. Believe me, I'll get to that, but even some of the canon stuff is like, why would you do this? For example, it is incredibly important that we see Itachi's perspective on the day he slaughtered the Uchiha clan. You know, it shows us why he did it. But now that Tobi is involved, it kind of diminishes the idea that Itachi chose to do this and succeeded all on his own, which is part of what made him so formidable and interesting to begin with. Similarly, we didn't need to see the Night the Nine-Tails attacks as many times as we did. I can't really articulate why I felt this way, but the more we see of this event, the less special it feels. I get that it's an important enough event in the story that it's good to see all of these different perspectives on it, but we kind of got the gist in the intro of the very first episode, so the more we see of it, the more it feels like padding. And speaking of padding, I gotta say, this is one of the laziest shows I have ever seen in my life, and I don't use the word lazy lightly. That's not to say that the story is bad, because it's not. Like I'll get into, I think it's pretty well written, all things considered, but the anime pulls some shit that really gets my titties in a twist. Firstly, the filler. There is so fucking much filler, but not in the way that most anime fans think of it. When most anime fans say filler, they're referring to like anime-only stuff that wasn't in the manga, with many making the distinction between canon episodes and filler episodes. God forbid they say fillers, like plural, I fucking hate that. Kind of a dumb distinction if you ask me, but that's not really what I'm complaining about, because having filler episodes is to be expected, especially for a long-running series that was still being adapted as the source material was coming out. When I say filler here, I'm not referring to anime-exclusive arcs or what have you, because believe me, I'll get to that. I'm talking about how they pad out the entire fucking show. Here's what I mean. Say you're watching a fight scene, right? And the episode ends right as it's getting good. Okay, fair enough, gotta keep the audience in suspense. So you start up the next episode, and the first few minutes of it are just the last few minutes of the last one, or even worse, the whole first half of the episode will be a recap of shit that happened in the last few episodes. Granted, I can only think of one example where this actually happened really early on. Even later in the series, though, they'll often show the same shit over and over again. I swear, man, they show Obito's backstory like 5 times in the span of 3 episodes, and they had to have shown it a total of at least 25 times. It's fucking nutty. It retreads so much ground early on that I found myself skipping around just to get to the shit that I hadn't seen yet, and I never do shit like that. The manga has 700 chapters and the anime 720 episodes, but most of the anime filler isn't even stuff that just wasn't in the source material, it's just recapping shit that the audience has already seen. That is way worse than having a few anime exclusive arcs or whatever. Compare this to One Piece, which has over 1,000 episodes and is still ongoing, and even they don't have this much filler. Probably. I don't know. I didn't watch the anime. Like, the whole reason I read the manga for One Piece was because I was under the impression that it would have been too long to actually watch, and I assumed the anime would have had a lot more filler than it actually has, but Naruto is almost just as long and it has way more padding. My intention was to read One Piece while I watched the other two because I figured it would be more efficient, but it probably would have been more efficient to watch the anime for One Piece and read the manga for the other two than the way that I did it. Either way, I'm still watching hundreds of episodes, so fuck it. I don't know. Even so, if you want to include the most commonly used yet still wrong definition of filler, which is to say stuff that wasn't in the original manga, then Naruto has plenty of that as well. Filler always kind of has a negative connotation to it for whatever reason, when I feel that in many cases, filler can be a positive thing. While many filler episodes in Naruto specifically don't really further the plot in any meaningful way or progress any character arcs or main characters, they are great at fleshing out the world and side characters who didn't get anything in the manga. In fact, I'd say that they did this effectively enough to where I was genuinely questioning whether some arcs were even filler or not, before eventually just looking it up. For example, in the Bikochu search mission arc, there's a pretty big focus on Hinata's character growth. You know, she gets a big moment in the last fight. This arc was not in the manga, and you could kind of tell by the whole vibe that it was filler, but seeing Hinata have an actual cool character moment made me question it for a second. It wasn't in the manga, so it's filler by technicality, but I have a hard time considering it filler because it adds onto the source material in such a meaningful way. After the first Sasuke vs Naruto fight, much of the remainder of the original series is filler like this, and I didn't quite mind it in that it helped us get more acquainted with some of these side characters who wouldn't have gotten much screen time otherwise. This specifically does wonders for Naruto and Sasuke's blooming friendship, which I felt much of the canon material kinda skips over and leaves the viewer to assume that it happened. Other filler arcs were genuinely fun and emotionally endearing, like the Power arc, which has absolutely no right being as good as it is. I'm convinced this was originally a movie that they split into a bunch of episodes, and I don't know how true that is, but there's just no fucking way. That being said, I think the problem with some of Naruto's filler, specifically the flashback stuff, is that they often have to write around the fact that the childhoods of characters like Naruto and Sasuke are incredibly important to their arcs, and they occasionally retcon stuff to make it work. And a lot of the time, it just doesn't. For example, there's a brief filler arc during the 4th Great Shinobi War where Naruto and friends reminisce over a kid named Yota that they were friends with as kids. It's cute and all, but you know going into it that Naruto befriending Sakura and Shikamaru and everybody else has to be reversed somehow in order to line up with the start of the series. Naruto later calls Yota his first friend, but that doesn't really work at all when his relationship with Sasuke is so important for that exact reason. Their memories are wiped at the end of the arc in order to line up with the beginning of the show, but even if they don't remember it, it still detracts from their characters, Naruto and Sakura specifically.
Hey Goop, what's up? Cool binder. Hey Goop, wanna come over to my house today?
They all hated me.
The other reason that I consider this show lazy is because the animation outside of fight scenes is often super limited, often restricted to long segments of single frames. Now I've seen some of Studio Pierrot's other work, so I know they can animate some bomb-ass shit when they need to, and Naruto definitely has that, especially in its major fight scenes. You've been seeing them throughout this video. Naruto vs Sasuke is the obvious example, but Lee vs Gaara did not need to go that hard, but they did that. They did that for us. When the outlines get thin, you know shit's about to go down. But aside from those standout examples, dialogue scenes or any of that shit is just so uninteresting to look at. And I get it, this was made in the early 2000s, animation wasn't quite as respected as it is now, and the animators were likely on a super strict deadline to keep up with a weekly schedule that probably negatively affected their health. And that's obviously pretty fucked up. They did the best with what they had, which I completely respect, but you can't deny that the final product tends to leave a lot to be desired. I often found myself starting to fall asleep when watching this, not because I was uninterested in the story or anything like that, but because everything started to feel pretty formulaic, especially in the filler arcs. It's not to say that it's bad or boring, it's just that you can tell it's filler, right? It's late at night, I'm already tired after a long day, just for me to watch a show that just does not visually stimulate me in any way and often has the same story over and over again. If you guys ever have trouble falling asleep, just throw on some Naruto filler, you'll be out like a light. Hey, like a light. Hey. I found that the longer filler arcs, like 4 episodes or more, were the ones where I had a harder time keeping my eyes open, while the random one-off episodes were much more fun and engaging. These issues, both the filler and lacking animation, are both somewhat fixed in Shippuden. The animation is way more dynamic in non-fight scenes, and the filler is in much shorter bursts than the 70 episodes straight we got in the original series, and when it is in longer bursts, it's usually episodic filler where it's a bunch of fun one-and-done episodes. However, one of the biggest problems with filler arcs, in general, but most notably in Naruto, is that they absolutely fuck the pacing of the main arcs. This is most egregious during the Birth of Ten Tails and the Kage Otsutsuki arcs, since they have 2 back-to-back filler arcs that combined last 20 episodes, placed smack dab in the middle of the climax of the fight, and then right after that they hit you with another flashback arc that you can't really skip because it's canon. Like, dude, just let me fucking vibe, please. Shippuden also has what anime fans call mixed episodes, which are episodes where some of it is canon from the manga and the rest of it is filler. The beauty of these types of episodes is that, as someone who hasn't read the manga, you usually can't tell what's filler and what isn't, which makes it way more engaging. I wasn't even gonna touch Boruto for this video, but I did a little bit of research into it, and apparently the anime is partially the manga, partially this movie, and partially its own thing, but it's still all canon somehow. I've heard that shit is like 200 episodes in and still hasn't touched manga material yet though, so I assume it's running into a similar problem. Like father, like son, I suppose. So some of y'all might be thinking right now, hey, idiot, if you didn't want to deal with filler, why didn't you just fucking skip it? Well, one, it just feels wrong to skip episodes. It's just not something I've ever needed to do, so it just doesn't really cross my mind. And two, I wanted the authentic Naruto experience, if you know what I'm saying. The only thing that could have made it more authentic was watching illegal 240p YouTube uploads where each episode is split into 3 fucking parts. However, if you do want a more accurate and less time-consuming version of Naruto, some fans have created Naruto Kai, which is a version of the anime that fans have recut to be closer to the manga. I didn't watch this version, obviously, as you might have guessed, but it may appeal to some of you. or just read the fucking manga. That usually solves all your problems. With that excessively long filler rant out of the way though, I do want to make it very clear that I do like Naruto. While the story can drag at times, okay, a lot of the time, the stories they do tell are truly really great. Let's get into the tier list. I'll only be touching the canon arcs here because that's obviously the show's strongest stuff, and as I just ranted about for 5 minutes about filler, you all know that I don't have much nice to say about that. Howdy. So we got our Naruto arc tier list. It's a little bit PogChamp. Let's get a little bit crazy. So the first major arc is the Land of Waves. We're also going to be including this the stuff from before that because obviously there is a little bit of stuff before the Land of Waves, but apparently it's not included on this tier list. So who the fuck did that? I don't know what they were thinking. Honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of Land of Waves just because I watched the anime, and the anime has a lot of repetitive bullshit in it that I just didn't care for. Classic shonen shit, training, rivalry, a big fight against a fucking cracker. Plus, you just get the introduction of Naruto and the whole squad. Kind of an important arc. You can't skip it. The only thing I didn't really care for Atlanta Waves was the stuff with the regular people, like the villagers they were staying with. I didn't really care for them. Zabuza's relationship with fucking Haku was weird though. I don't know what the fuck is up with that. It's a little bit sus or mogus. We're gonna put you in B. Next, of course, is the Chunin exams. Do I really need to say anymore? S fucking tier. Everybody loves the Chunin exams. I love the Chunin exams. I love tournament arcs in general. This has it in fucking droves. A lot of people shit on the fight between Naruto and Neji, but I actually think it's really great. A lot of people like to misrepresent that fight just because of what happens later in the series with all the magic shit that happens. Kind of seems to devalue what Naruto is saying in that fight, but I don't think that's the case at all. Because Naruto is still an underdog in that fight, which is really epic. Of course, Gaara is introduced here. We get Rock Lee versus Gaara. I fucking love that fight. I love Gaara. I love Rock Lee, two of my favorite characters, so the fact that they share screen time like this I was nutting in my fucking pants the whole time. That's a little sus, but it's pretty epic. I love the Chunin exams. Everybody loves the Chunin exams. It fucks pretty hard. The Chunin exams flow pretty quickly into the Konoha Crush arc, or I call it the attack on the Leaf Village, because that's what it is. I didn't know this was actually called the Konoha Crush, but the Konoha Crush, this is where Orochimaru and the Sand Crackers attack. We get some pretty cool stuff going on. We get a cool fight between the third Hokage and Orochimaru, which I thought was pretty cool, even though it was dragged the fuck out in the anime. I like that the third Hokage summons a big fucking monkey. I thought it was fucking epic. I just love monkeys, dude. We find out in this arc that Gaara was a Jinchuriki as well, just like Naruto, and they have the big fight between the Nine Tails and the One Tails, which is really cool. Naruto helping Gaara understand what it feels like to be alone and how to help him deal with that. It's part of why I love Gaara so much as a character. Big fan of the Konoha Crush. We'll put that in A, honestly. But of course, the attack on the Leaf leaves the village without a Hokage. So Naruto and Jiraiya go off to search for Tsunade, leading into the Search for Tsunade arc. Real fucking creative title there. This is a pretty fun arc. We get introduced to Tsunade and her big fucking titties. Love Tsunade. Tsunade is pretty cool. She's one of the only female characters that's actually well written in this fucking series, and a lot of it is honestly in this arc where she has all of this trauma from being a medical ninja and from her losing people, but seeing Naruto is so similar to those people that she loved so much. She just puts all of her hope into him, which I really love that. I love seeing the three Sannin fight, which is cool, and seeing Kabuto get his fucking ass beat was pretty fun as well. Fuck Kabuto. Honestly, put it in A tier. Oh, of course, how could I forget the fucking Rasengan, bro? This is where the Rasengan happens. It's got a little mini training arc in there. It's sexual. But then we get to the arc that really made me resonate with the series on an emotional level, which was the Sasuke recovery mission arc, where Sasuke leaves the village and then Shikamaru leads a team to go get him back. And this was one of the coolest arcs in the sense that most of the guys of the Konoha 11 just doing their thing. They all get their own dedicated fights. I kind of didn't like Orochimaru's goons. I thought they were kind of lame, if not just kind of shitty. Some of them I didn't care much for. I didn't really care for Kiba's whole thing, honestly. But Neji and Choji were pretty cool. Shikamaru's fight was awesome. I loved seeing Rock Lee get drunk and fight Bonesaw, and he's bailed out by Gaara in one of the coolest fucking reveals ever. When the sand crackers come in, oh! But yeah, honestly, I love the Sasuke recovery mission. Obviously, it ends with the iconic fucking Naruto versus Sasuke fight. Goated ass animation, great emotional fucking shit behind it. Super great fight, one of the best of the whole series, one of the best of all shonen, honestly. S tier just for that fight alone. This marks the end of part 1, and in between parts 1 and 2, we get Kakashi Gaiden, which is essentially a flashback that shows Kakashi's whole backstory and how he gets his Sharingan, which leads to some spoilery things I probably shouldn't say. I like this story, I just wish they didn't show it so fucking much in the anime. They show this like 800 fucking times. It's painful. I every time I see it, I like it a little bit less. It really hits on the first time because you're like, oh shit, that's how it happens, right? And once it becomes more relevant near the final arc, it's pretty cool. But it's kind of just, you know, is just kind of there. You know what I mean? Like, it's an important moment, but they show it so much that it loses all fucking meaning. But we'll put it in B. We'll make a nice little rectangle here. Then we get into Naruto Shippuden, which begins with the Kazekage rescue mission, where Gaara is abducted by the Akatsuki, so Naruto and Team 7 have to get him back. Like I said, I kind of didn't like how they depowered Gaara by taking away his tailed beast power, but just the idea that Gaara was gonna die was wild to me, because like, oh, they reveal in this arc, if you lose your tailed beast, you fucking die. And then seeing Gaara just get his tailed beast ripped out of him, I'm like, shit. One of my favorite fucking characters is dying. This is not okay. I was very upset. Then they revive him in the end. It was kind of half-assed, kind of Deus Ex Machina a little bit, which was kind of to me. I thought the two Akatsuki members they introduced here, Sasori and Deidara, were kind of alright. You know, whatever. I didn't really care for Sasori. I thought his puppet shit was dumb and creepy, and I didn't really care for the whole fucking conflict with Granny Chio. But Sakura's fight with Sasori was pretty cool when it was well animated and it wasn't dragged the fuck out for no reason. And Deidara was cool with his fucking his clay abilities, which was kind of cool. And plus just kind of the stuff outside of this arc where you just seeing Naruto come home after all this time and seeing everybody's kind of post time skip designs was cool. It's a pretty good arc, honestly. A tier. I'll put an A. Fuck it. After this is the Tenchi Bridge reconnaissance mission where Naruto and Team 7 do some recon on some of the on the Akatsuki. They end up crossing paths with Orochimaru, and you know he has a whole fight with Naruto where he unlocks the Nine Tails yet again. Fuck. I'm dead. I'm dying. I'm deceased. But no, this was definitely one of those points where I realized how stretched out the anime was going to be, because they spend like an entire episode and a half of just Naruto sitting there charging up his fucking nine-tailed chakra before actually fighting Orochimaru in any way. But when they do fight, it is pretty cool, and seeing Sakura be the one to kind of help him and bring him back was also pretty cool. You kind of get a little bit extra shit about Sai in here, which is awesome because you didn't really get much with him in the last arc. And of course, Naruto and Sakura reuniting with Sasuke and finding out that how far gone he's become was insane, even though they do kind of reveal it in the first episode of Shippuden for no reason, even though the manga didn't do it that way. Love that shit. It's a pretty good arc. Honestly, I'll put it in A. I'll even bitch about it. But next we have one of my absolute favorite arcs, and I think a lot of other fans' favorite arcs, is the Akatsuki Suppression Mission arc. This arc focuses mostly on Shikamaru, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, and it really elevates Shikamaru's character to a whole new level. A lot of fans call this arc Shikamaru Shippuden because Naruto took such a backseat throughout the most of it that it was like, okay, alright, is this the same show anymore? What the fuck? And of course, we also get the reveal of the Rasen Shuriken, which is fucking epic, and the explanation of all the styles, which is kind of tangential to the whole thing, but this arc made me love Shikamaru. I talked about it a little bit earlier. S tier, love that arc. Next is the Itachi Pursuit mission, where Sasuke, as the title implies, pursues Itachi, and then they have their big fight in the fucking thing. It's pretty cool seeing Sasuke fight some Akatsuki members like Deidara and actually defeating Deidara, which is something that not even Naruto or Kakashi could do, showing how just powerful he's become after, you know, being with Orochimaru for so long. Seeing Sasuke beat Orochimaru to begin with is just like, whoa, this dude is fucking crazy since the last time we saw him. But again, it's kind of a transitional arc in the sense that like, okay, here's how he gets from here to where we want him to be. But it's not bad. We'll call it a B though. Got its cool moments. In between this arc and the actual fight between Sasuke and Itachi, we have the tale of Jiraiya the Gallant, which is partially a flashback arc and partially a present arc, where Jiraiya goes to the Hidden Rain village to see what the deal is with the Akatsuki, and he ends up coming across Pain, who he finds out was one of his former students from back during the Third Great Shinobi War, and this leads into a whole flashback involving Nagato, and it sets up the Pain arc absolutely perfectly. The death of Jiraiya, the reveal of Sage Mode, it's fucking insane. Just seeing Jiraiya go down after knowing a bit about him for so long is it's a gut-wrenching fucking arc. Jiraiya truly is the Gallant. I honestly thought they were gonna try to reverse Jiraiya's death somehow, but it actually sticks, which I was genuinely surprised to see. But I vibe with it. I vibe with my guy Jiraiya. Honestly, we'll fucking put this in A, honestly. I'll fucking do it, dude. Then we have the fated battle between brothers, which is where Sasuke finally confronts Itachi and fights him for real. And this is one of the greatest fights in all of Naruto. You see some insane shit. I feel like this is where the Sharingan becomes absolutely fucking broken, because that thing can just do anything at this fucking point. Like, you got the Amaterasu, you got Susanoo, all these fucking powers where, like, what happened to the original intention of this fucking thing, where it was just, you know, I copy jutsu. That's how it happened. But seeing these two fight is just been a long time coming, and seeing it actually go down the way that it does is fucking insane. Seeing who wins and who loses and how it all goes down is just, it's just wild. It's insane. It's a great arc. I love it. A tier. Then we get to one of the actual best arcs, which is Pain's Assault. The Pain arc, as many call it. I think this goes without saying. This is probably arguably the best arc in all of Naruto. Many fans actually argue that this is where the story should end, but I don't really agree with that at all. But no, it's got everything. It's got great fights, great character development. This is where Naruto really truly comes into his own and stops being an immature little asshole and becomes a mature young man. He goes through this whole training arc to get Sage Mode. When he actually pulls up with Sage Mode to fight Pain, it's so fucking epic. The whole Hinata moment, I love that. And unlocking the Nine Tails to actually beat Pain and then talking down Nagato with the Talk no Jutsu is crazy. It's a little bit nutty. One of the best arcs, no doubt. It's a slapper. It goes hard. Next is the 5 Kage Summit arc, where all the 5 Kage finally come together, and it's really cool to see some of the other Kage aside from just the Hokage and the Kaze Kage. The whole storyline that Naruto is going through, you know, after meeting Tobi and seeing Sasuke and his gang attack the fucking summit, and some great animation. And it sets up the war arc almost perfectly in a really cool way. I like it, but it's kind of it's got its moments, but I wouldn't say it's one of the better arcs. We'll put it in B though. But next we have the 4th Great Shinobi War, which is split into several different parts, if you will. First is the Countdown arc, which is basically just everybody preparing for war after the war was confirmed to be a thing in the earlier arc. It's pretty cool from the war perspective, but I really like the Naruto training stuff in the first half of it. We get to see Naruto's parents and how much they actually cared for him, and how everything played out with the Nine Tails, and Naruto just holds no resentment towards them at all. It's so wholesome. I love it. But it's definitely like a very slow, dry setup arc. So we'll put it in C just for that, and plus because I just kind of feel like I haven't been using these bottom tiers enough, but trust me, we'll probably will. Then we get the confrontation, which is where, you know, the fighting actually begins. There's a lot of cool battles throughout this arc. It's mostly just fighting a lot of the time. Something I do like about this is that the resurrected shinobi that Kabuto uses, the way they're defeated a lot of the time is by, you know, helping them deal with their trauma from when they were alive, which I think is pretty cool. It's a neat way to, like, you know, still have some emotional resonance in this war arc. Otherwise, it's just like a lot of fighting, which is sometimes pretty cool, but there's also so much fucking filler in this in the anime. It's not even funny. So we'll put it in B just because it is what it is. Then we get to the climax. Dude. This shit's insane, bro. I love it. There's so many crazy reveals throughout this climax, so many crazy ass moments. The power progression is fucking stupid, but it's so cool. I don't even care how stupid it is. You get the reveal of who Tobi is. You get the reveal that Madara Uchiha is still involved with this. It's crazy. I love it. S tier, suck my balls. The birth of the Ten Tails kind of continues on with this. I assumed they were the same arc, honestly, but this is kind of slightly different. We get the Ten Tails involved. This is where Naruto and Sasuke find out about their fucking reincarnation. It's some pretty cool stuff, but a lot of it is a little bit expository. Granted, there's a decent amount of action in it. I don't remember if this was this arc or the previous arc, but Guy Sensei fighting Madara Uchiha with the 9th gate or the 8th gate or whatever, just beating his fucking ass into the ground. It was so lit. I love it. A lot of great moments in this arc. Honestly, A tier. Then, this is where the series starts to kind of shit the bed a little bit, because the Kaguya Otsutsuki Strikes arc. What the fuck is this? Kaguya Otsutsuki comes out of absolutely nowhere. We didn't need any of this backstory about her in the Sage of the Six Paths. We didn't need any of that. She just comes out of nowhere as like another final villain, when that final villain could have easily just been Madara or somebody else, or even maybe the Sage of Six Paths himself, even though it doesn't really make any sense. But Kaguya just comes out of absolutely nowhere, and she doesn't really strike me as that interesting of a character. Though I do like the fight against her. I think it's cool how Team 7 all come together to beat her ass, which is cool. I do like the ending of the Kaguya Otsutsuki Strikes arc, just because, you know, we get the Naruto and Sasuke fight we've been waiting so long for, and they finally make up and become friends again. But otherwise, it's kind of meh. Like, this didn't need to happen. This could have easily ended with Obito. So we'll We'll put you a D. For D's nuts. The rest of the series from this point onward is pretty much anime only, and it's kind of, nobody really gives a shit, because it kind of sucks. The last few arcs are anime only, but I'll still talk about them anyways, because they're basically canon. I'm not going to talk about this Itachi one, even though I do kind of like the Itachi one. We'll put the Itachi one in, like, C. It was fine. The last 3 arcs, kind of this epilogue arc where everybody's a couple years older. It's fast-forwarded a few years. Okay. Well, the camera battery just died, so I may or may not have to re-record the entire thing. So, whatever. We have audio. Who gives a fuck? I didn't really care for these last couple arcs. I thought the Shikamaru arc was kind of, like, lame and boring. We didn't really need this. Kind of lame. We'll put it in E. The Sasuke book was just kind of pointless to me. I didn't care at all about anything that was going on in it. I just wanted to see Sasuke with the gang again, and we just didn't get that because he's off just being a fucking secluded asshole edgelord the whole time. Didn't really care for that. We're gonna put that in E. And I actually kind of liked the wedding arc. I thought the wedding arc was cute. It was a nice way to kind of tie everything together. I love the scene in like the last episode where Naruto asks Iruka Sensei to act as his father during his wedding. I fucking love that. It brings everything full circle. It brings the whole series full circle. My only problem is that this arc is kind of makes no sense if you haven't seen The Last, which is a movie, which is actually pretty good. And I kind of just don't really care much for the actual final moments of the series itself. You know, if it's your thing, it's your thing, but it's not really my thing. So put that bitch in C tier. It's pretty mid. But there you go. There's my Naruto tier list. Here's a wholesome conclusion for you. Here's my big girthy cock. What? At the end of the day, I have plenty of problems with Naruto, and I would say that it's far from the best shonen series out there. It's touted as one of the quintessential anime out there. It's a series that's often ubiquitous with the medium, but it's honestly not all it's cracked up to be. It's messy, repetitive at times, the anime specifically has a lot of useless filler, so it's a lot longer than it needs to be, and I didn't really personally care for the ending. It truthfully did not live up to the hype for me. But that doesn't mean that I didn't like it. In fact, I like Naruto for the same reasons I like One Piece. It has heart where it matters. Sure, it's easy for people to get lost in the flashy fights and like epic hype moments, but at its core, Naruto is a character-driven series. Nothing about the story works if the viewer isn't invested in the characters. And while this goes for pretty much every story in a general sense, it's especially the case for Naruto. It's a show that knows how to make its audience feel, whether that be sadness, hype, catharsis, happiness, or something in between that's hard to describe. And no matter how dumb it is or how messy the story gets, its emotional moments still fucking hit. And I think that's pretty telling. Naruto is a tale of hard work and determination, dreams and aspirations, playing the hand you're dealt and the divide of generations. But most importantly, it's about friendship and the bonds we form with others. Whether it's a rivalry, a romance, a deep kinship, or something in between, the relationships we form shape our actions, our goals, and us as people. We wouldn't be the people we are without the influence of others, and we can't deny the feelings that others make us feel, because to deny your connections to others is to deny life itself. Naruto is a great series, but not because it's particularly well written compared to its contemporaries, but because it's a show that understands the human condition. I regret being put off from the series for as long as I was, and for such a petty reason back in the day, because I have genuinely been missing out. I think it's pretty thematically fitting that the comments of other people had affected my view of the series for so long, yet the moment I stopped giving a fuck about what other people had to say was what ultimately sent me on this 6-month-long journey. Naruto may not be the best series out there, but it is still fucking goated, and you can be damn sure I consider myself a fan. Believe it.
Fumi, komu, se axeru, kake, hiki, wa nai sa sora yo, yoru wo nukeru. Neji, komu, sa saigo ni, sashi, hiki, deru sa sora yo, hibi wo kezuru. Kokoro wo soto, hiraite kyoto. 引き寄せたら届くよきっと伝うよもっとさ息そうで絞り取ってもうそれらしいだけど前よりずっとそう遠くへ奪い取って時間だって君じゃないなら意味はないのさだから遥か彼方
Shadow Clone Jutsu! It's orgy time, baby! Alright, here's another ad break for you. Are you sick of these yet? The earlier ad break, I advertised some of my own shit, but I want to advertise some other shit that I've seen. Cool. That's not me. That doesn't benefit me at all. So for you Naruto fans out there, I want you to check this shit out, right? So in case you don't know, there's a rapper. His name's Big Lug. He makes Naruto anime type music, but apparently he's friends with Yuri Lowenthal, the English voice of Sasuke Uchiha. They did a whole entire rap album with Naruto voice actors. So if you wanted to hear Madara Uchiha rap about beating the fuck out of you while he breakdances, epic style, then you can totally do that. It's a fucking banger. Go listen to the album. It's called Fire Style. It hits fucking. It's some bars. I'm not gonna lie. Check that shit out. Also, if you want epic funnies, go follow me on Twitter. Or if you want to see me react to Naruto videos, Naruto like opinion pieces, we do that a lot on Twitch, over at twitch.tv/MattCMG YT. So go follow me on Twitch, and we may or may not occasionally react to some big popular Naruto videos. Whoa, crazy. Penis style, penis comb jutsu. Oh! All right, back to your regularly scheduled bullshit.
Dust off your swords and prepare yourselves for the arrival of Bleach. New episodes start next Saturday night at midnight. Dying is just the beginning. That is only Toonami on Adult Swim.
And last but not least for this video, we have Bleach, released in 2000. Cunt. And last but not least for this video, we have Bleach, released in Fucker. And last but not least for this video, we have Bleach, released in 2001 and written by Tight Kubo. Yeah, apparently it's pronounced tight. I don't know either. Fuck you. Unlike One Piece or Naruto, where I actually knew a decent amount about them going into them because they were just so prolific in the anime community, I didn't know jack shit about Bleach, aside from the fact that it's a liquid that I desperately want to drink. You know, I knew about some of the characters like Ichigo, obviously. I knew about Rukia because she was brought up on my streams back in the day, and I knew Yoruichi from, adult places. It was the only one of the big three where I had no idea what the story would be or where it would go, so I was excited to get into it. But then I discovered something. Apparently, Bleach was dealt a really raw deal with its anime adaptation. Much of the manga was animated, with filler of course, but for whatever reason the final arc of the manga was never adapted into the anime. This issue has since been remedied, with the final arc now getting an anime adaptation that's probably already been released by the time this video is coming out. I was fully intending to watch the anime for this video, but considering it's not complete and I have other shit to watch for other videos, I opted to read the manga instead. Kinda defeats the purpose of calling it the anime series when I only watched one actual anime, but whatever, fuck you. Bleach brings us to the small town of Karakura, Japan, where we meet our protagonist, Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo has the ability to see ghosts, which he is eventually forced to take a little bit more seriously when his family is attacked by a hollow, a rogue spirit of a deceased human. Combating the hollows are the Shinigami, or the Soul Reapers, who protect the human realm from spiritual abnormalities. To awaken his latent potential, a Shinigami named Rukia Kuchiki appears and gives Ichigo her powers, turning him into a Shinigami as well. Now serving as Rukia's replacement, Ichigo has to fight spirits throughout his small town as his classmates also start to develop spiritual powers, and some people from the Soul Society plot some nefarious acts. This is literally just Danny Phantom sent tweet. Something that initially put me off from Bleach was that unlike One Piece and Naruto, which had these big, sprawling fantasy worlds, Bleach had a much more realistic and grounded setting. The characters all start off in real-world Japan and do normal things like hang out with their friends and go to school. While there are the more fantastical locations like Soul Society and Hueco Mundo, they're often really grounded and simple in their design. Say Reite opts for an old Japanese village type aesthetic, and Hueco Mundo is literally just white. Is that why they call it Bleach? This may just be a byproduct of this being the last of the three that I read, but I thought that the settings were rather bland, though it's definitely something that grounds it more than the other two. Unlike its contemporaries, Bleach doesn't really focus on world building. It's just not something that really matters all that much to the series outside of its magic systems, so I can forgive the settings for being what they are, but a more relatable setting helps the series as a whole feel much more down to earth in a grander context. When it comes to powers and abilities, Bleach keeps it simple. Bleach's version of generic energy powers is Reiatsu, or spiritual pressure, which is basically as generic as it gets. You know, it's a my invisible power is greater than your invisible power type beat. It goes a little bit deeper than that, but ultimately this is just a bunch of people swinging swords at each other.
Swords!
Swords!
Swords are super important to the lore of Bleach that works in perfect conjunction with its magic system. A Shinigami sword, their Zanpakuto, has a unique spirit living within it that the user must accept in order to tap into, and when they do, they are able to unleash their blade's true power, which comes in the form of Bankai. Each arc progressively adds another power-up for Ichigo to obtain that raises the bar a lot higher, which is great for him, but this often leaves every other character feeling like they've peaked way too early. The power scaling is super fucked in this regard, and it suffers from a similar problem to Naruto. A great example is Renji. After he achieves Bankai, he never feels like he gets any stronger, and this is the case for plenty of other characters like Hitsugaya and Byakuya. These guys were established to be pretty strong, and they'll often talk about how they've gotten stronger, but it never really feels that way. Aside from Ichigo, a lot of the characters don't really feel like they get stronger. They'll either remain stagnant or will have the excuse that they've always been this strong, so just don't question it. That being said though, the power scaling is the last thing you should be thinking about when it comes to Bleach, since the powers and fights aren't about who beats who, but rather serve as a way to understand these characters on a much deeper level. Getting into the characters, let's start with our protagonist, Ichigo Kurosaki. Like a lot of other shonen protagonists, Ichigo is arrogant and talks tough to his opponents, with his devotion to his friends keeping him going through thick and thin. However, while Luffy's perceived arrogance comes more from ignorance, and Naruto grows out of his, Ichigo's comes from his inability to let his pride be broken. His actions are often noble, typically wanting to save his friends and protect those closest to him, but he often loses the plot, so to speak, and his pride takes over. He will opt to continue to fight in order to prove himself and test his own strength rather than just take the W or the L as it is. Ichigo values pride and honor as a warrior, something that becomes central to the series' themes. Ichigo is a lot more down to earth than the other protagonists we've looked at today, which is definitely a breath of fresh air. He doesn't quite wear his heart on his sleeve the way the other shonen protagonists do. His personality isn't as intense as Luffy or Naruto, and he feels a lot more human because of it. Ichigo has self-doubts, regrets, and no real larger-than-life goal. The loss of his mother is something that is central to understanding his character, and it really fucks him up, and he's clearly never fully recovered from it. Even though it wasn't his fault, he still feels guilty about it, so he carries the weight of the world on his shoulders long before he was a Shinigami, to the point where he hasn't really had time to think about himself. This is best seen in a lot of the school scenes, where it's established that Ichigo is rather intelligent, but has given almost no thought as to what he wants to do with his life because he's so preoccupied with other people's shit. All he really wants at the end of the day is to figure his shit out. And honestly, don't we all? Of course, one of the biggest things about Ichigo is protecting his friends, and that ends up being a pretty big motif for his character. He constantly goes out of his way to protect his friends. It's the driving force of two of the main arcs, but often at the cost of his own happiness and with no real regard to what he wants for himself. I found the Fullbring arc to be super interesting in this regard, since it's Ichigo acting for himself for once, and he gets super obsessive about it. In the beginning of the story, he claims to have no desire to be a Shinigami. He doesn't want the fucking smoke, so his time without his powers should be a blessing to him, but he knows that it's the only way he can ensure that the people he cares about are safe, so even though he doesn't want his powers, he'll work so hard to get them back because keeping his friends happy keeps him happy. He'd rather risk his own life for the happiness of others than to be happy himself, and there's definitely something noble in that.
Don't hit the camera, man.
Dual wield!
Yet another thing that sets Ichigo apart from his contemporary main characters is that there's never really a question as to whether Ichigo is physically powerful enough to beat any particular villain, so his struggles against them are almost always internal in some way. This is best seen during the Arrancar arc, where he purposefully holds himself back against multiple opponents to keep his hollow from emerging and endangering his friends, and this kind of thing happens in pretty much every arc to some degree. In order to control his immense power, he often trains by speaking with and fighting his own Zanpakuto, which if it wasn't incredibly obvious, is a metaphor for fighting his inner demons. He's quite literally facing the parts of himself that he doesn't want to acknowledge, and doesn't defeat them, but accepts them. Failing to accept and deal with those problems properly manifests itself through incomplete hollowification, among other things, causing him to lose any sense of himself. The loss of his mother is his most prominent of these inner demons, one that he carries with him throughout the entire series and is able to defeat and overcome it by avenging her in the final battle. He has to face the grief, the guilt, the darkness, and the pain that comes with all of that in order to be a better fighter, but more importantly, a better person. Honestly, if I haven't convinced you by now, Ichigo is an incredibly complex character, certainly way more complex than I was expecting, and I can't believe that people don't consider him in the top echelons of anime characters.
I'm Ichigo Kurosaki from Bleach, and you're watching Disney Plus. Bankai!
The first person that Ichigo meets during the story and introduces him to the world of Shinigami is Rukia Kuchiki. As a former member of the Gotei 13, Rukia knows all of the inner workings of the Soul Society and the Shinigami way, so she serves as a bit of a mentor to Ichigo during the first arc, but is also treated as an equal. A lot of her major appearances in the early phases of the story are surprisingly comedic, which I was not expecting based on my preconceived knowledge of the character. I was expecting her to be way more of a badass, and she totally is during the later arcs when she's back to kicking ass, but a decent amount of time she's just like making this face, which I love, but like, also fucking do something with her. The first arc establishes how she befriends Ichigo and the rest of the crew, and then in Soul Society she becomes a damsel in distress who just thinks about Ichigo all the time, and for the remaining arcs she's relegated to a recurring supporting character and gets way less screen time than I would have liked. With how prevalent she is in the marketing of the series, I was expecting to see way more of her, so I was kind of disappointed with how her character was handled. Apparently, Kubo intended her to be a deuteragonist alongside Ichigo, which you can definitely see in the first few arcs, but stops being the case after a while. Kubo is adamant that she's still a main character despite him not really writing her that way, which is kinda weird to me. That being said, the character development that she does get is kinda epic. I know it was kind of disingenuous for me to call her a damsel in distress during the Soul Society arc, but this is where a bulk of her character development lies. She feels guilt over a murder she committed many years ago and for dragging Ichigo into the world of Shinigami and disgracing herself in the process. She feels responsible for a man's death and the suffering of somebody that she considers a friend, and though she doesn't want to die, she accepts her fate if it will allow her to repent for her perceived sins. Throughout the Soul Society arc, she learns to forgive herself for her mistakes, and that though she's often cold to others, there are still people out there who care for her unconditionally. That shit is wholesome, dude. Somebody give this girl a hug. I love Rukia. She's a great character and has some great moments. I just wish Kubo gave her more material. But going back to the world of the living, one of Ichigo's main classmates and friends is Orihime Inoue, a kind and caring girl who develops the spiritual ability to protect and heal her comrades. It's made very clear early on that she greatly values friendship and has a bit of a crush on Ichigo, two things that drive her actions throughout the series. Though she has the ability to create shields and heal people, she often feels useless to the group since she isn't as strong of a fighter as everybody else, often feeling that she's a burden to her friends, so she wishes to become more capable and independent. Her denial of tragic events befalling her friends is so powerful that it manifests in her powers, where she can literally reverse damage and make it as if it never happened. In a similar vein to Rukia, I felt that they could have done a lot more with Orihime beyond just pining for Ichigo. Like, sure, she has a crush on him that drives her to want to protect people, which fits right in with this whole protection motif, but then Kubo just doesn't fucking do anything with it. I think this is best seen in the Hueco Mundo arc, which is kicked off by her willingly giving herself up to the enemy in order to prevent any additional violence, which makes sense. You know, it shows how Ichigo has rubbed off on her, but then the rest of the arc is just her sitting there looking sad the whole time. She basically takes on the same role that Rukia did in the last arc, so it feels a little bit repetitive in a story sense, though character-wise they are completely different. Orihime, much like Ichigo, has inner struggles and self-doubt, flaws that make her feel like a real person thrust into these supernatural circumstances. She often freezes up and doesn't know what to do in the heat of battle, but is able to overcome that through her belief in Ichigo and the rest of her friends. While this can probably be said for most of Bleach's main cast, I think Orihime is the most human of them all and is able to ground the other characters and us as the audience, and I don't think she gets enough credit for that.
Bread. 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 Bread.
I feel like there's no character in this series with a more accurate name than Chad. Full name Yasutora Sado, Chad is a bit of a gentle giant type character. When he's first introduced, he's a bit of a pacifist, often just taking his beatings both literal and metaphorical. He's got a big tough exterior, but is a big softy on the inside, though he doesn't really try to hide it. The irony of his caring nature is that he's an absolute fucking glass cannon of a fighter. With his spiritually enhanced punches, Chad is extremely powerful, but also defeated somewhat easily. I actually think it's really interesting that in this world filled with people that are basically samurai, that Chad is more of a boxer brawler type. His fighting style really stands out from the crowd here, which is super unfortunate because this dude takes nothing but fucking L's and I absolutely hate it. This dude has two big main fights in the whole series, and not only does he lose both of them, but they both last like 2 fucking chapters each. Like, give my boy a W, he deserves it. I actually really like the subtle character growth that Chad goes through. During the first few arcs, Chad is very reserved and doesn't really show his emotions, but in the final 2 arcs, he's a lot more socially open and expressive. It's a kind of a weird turn for his character, but I like to attribute it to him filling in for Ichigo during the time skip. He becomes a lot more outspoken after the time skip, and it's cool to see him this way after being as reserved as he was in the previous arcs. That being said, and I am sensing a trend here, Chad gets fucking shafted after a while and just stops being important to the story in any regard. With the exception of maybe the Fullbring arc, Chad just straight up did not need to be there. You could have taken him out of most of the story and nothing would really change that drastically. Chad is a fucking Chad, and Kubo should have treated him as such.
Oh, call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me!
From a Chad to a Melvin, the next main character is Uryu Ishida. Centuries ago, Shinigami had a rival group known as the Quincy, and though the two groups shared the same goal, they developed completely different philosophies and split apart, with the Quincy eventually being eradicated by the Shinigami. The last of the Quincy is Uryu, who wishes to carry on his heritage by using his Quincy powers to take down Hollows and prove his superiority to the Shinigami. These ideals are eventually challenged when he realizes that teaming up with Ichigo is his best option at winning against the Hollows, so he begrudgingly joins the team and grows to genuinely care for the others. He's kind of your typical rival character, serving as one of Ichigo's many rivals. They have your typical brains versus brawn type of dynamic, which while overplayed, still works in this instance. I actually like that Uryu is a lot more intelligent than many of the other characters, because his fights often revolve around using his powers in creative ways in order to win. While most other characters' powers revolve around how much spiritual energy they can exert, Quincy's fight by absorbing the pre-existing spiritual energy around them and redirecting it into their attacks. This was conceptually a really cool idea, though functionally it doesn't really change a whole lot. That being said, it was a cool way to differentiate Uryu from the others both visually and in terms of his personality. Though it's not very obvious until the 1000-Year Blood War arc, Uryu is meant to be a mirror to Ichigo and serves to display the duality of the Quincy and the Shinigami. While this is most obvious in their visual designs, with Ichigo in all black and Uryu in all white, their parallel backstories are pretty clear. Their fathers were both doctors, both lost their mothers at a young age, both are stubborn and set in their ways. Ichigo is brash and outspoken while Uryu is calm and reserved, and both have deep ties to Yuak and therefore the Shinigami and the Quincy. He mirrors Ichigo in that Ichigo fights for his friends and is open about that and takes pride in it, while Uryu fights for his own personal interests. The two have the same struggles but go about them in different ways. Uryu eventually comes to the conclusion that perhaps Ichigo was in fact spitting facts, and he grows to fight for his friends as well, contrary to the Quincy way, but he still does so in his own Uryu way. He is a mirror to Ichigo, and some might say he's the antithesis.
It doesn't matter what color I wear, I'm proud of my white!
That's gotta be racist, there's no way.
As for villains, the primary one for the first half of the series is Sosuke Aizen. Though he once served as the captain of the 5th Division of the Gotei 13, Aizen later defects from his military duties in order to obtain more power. This dude is raw as fuck. Bro, this dude is first introduced by seeing him fucking die, and then he comes back like, ha, I was actually alive and evil though, and he fucks off to another dimension and doesn't elaborate. My guy straight up hits pause on the main character's theme song. Tell me that's not Black Air Force One energy. Similarly to many other anime villains, Aizen has a massive god complex that drives his villainy, believing himself to be superior to everyone else, which leads him to want to overthrow the King of Soul Society. And while generic, there's something so raw about that. His hubris is his biggest gift and his biggest curse, both driving him toward his goal and ironically being the very thing that causes his defeat. He definitely falls under the category of a calculated genius type of villain, which combined with his general arrogance and calm and collected demeanor makes him just smug enough to hate him, but charismatic enough to want to see more of him. You hate to love him, but you don't love to hate him. Much of Aizen's philosophy revolves around fear, something that he uses to control and manipulate his subordinates, and ultimately he comes to the conclusion that fear is necessary in order to develop true courage. If you don't fear anything, then you will never act in a way that forces you out of your comfort zone, and you'll never grow as a person. A surprisingly mentally sound philosophy considering his insane, unhinged actions. While Aizen does do some fucked up shit, some undoubtedly evil and inexcusable acts, he still has a sense of reason to him. Like, there's no talking him down due to his nature, but he will give credit to those he sees something in, and will commend his enemies for their efforts, even though he believes those efforts to be futile. Game recognizes game, even if he knows he's gonna win that game, you know what I'm saying? A certified bad. We've just looked at the main group of Bleach, but that leads me to one of my biggest problems with it. It has a lot of characters, much like a lot of other shonen of its time, but I felt that very few of these characters were as fleshed out as they could have been. Obviously, you can't go in depth with every single character they introduce, because there's a fucking million of them by like the 3rd main arc, but if you're gonna dedicate a bunch of time to giving these characters screen time, then you need to like, you know, actually develop them so the audience actually gives a shit. I first noticed that this was a major issue by the Arrancar arc, since there's a huge portion of it that's just members of the different Gotei 13 fighting different Arrancars, but we don't really know very much about any of them aside from their brief introductions in the previous arc, so it made it kinda hard to care. Like, how do you expect me to care about this bald fucker when he had like one fight 200 chapters ago and we still know virtually nothing about his character? This is somewhat fixed by the 1000-Year Blood War, where it's essentially the same thing, but we're just more familiar with these characters, so it works a lot better. The series works best though, in my opinion, when they focus on Ichigo and his main crew, because they're the ones the audience cares most about, and therefore they have the most to work with. I actually find it super weird how the marketing of the series would lead you to believe that the main group is the most prevalent, but then Kubo sidelines characters like Rukia and Chad and goes on to focus on side characters we barely know for an extended period of time. Like, the priorities are a little bit fucked. Each arc also introduces a new group of like 10 fucking characters to the point where I forget a decent chunk of them. I barely remember any of the Arrancars by name aside from Grimmjow and Ulquiorra, and a bunch of these guys I remember for their design and nothing else, and the same goes for the Sternritter. That being said, I did like many of the side characters. Granted, they weren't necessarily what I wanted to see. I thought Hitsugaya was pretty cool, pun partially intended. Urahara was a fun mentor type character, and I fucking loved the Captain Commander during his appearances in Arrancar and 1000-Year Blood War. Bro, I don't know what the fuck Kubo's deal is, but this motherfucker knows how to make some fine-ass women, bro. Rangaku? More like Mommy Milky. Yoruichi? Some fine ebony excellence. Me and Soy Phone better have some soy quite fun. That didn't even make any fucking sense. I'm not one to support the Third Reich, but these four Nazis can scheisse on mein chest.
Can you please calm down? Fuck.
I haven't seen much of the anime aside from what I grabbed for this video and the random filler that I would catch on Pluto TV from time to time, but unlike Naruto, where the filler was to its detriment, I felt that Bleach's filler helped it in that it gives us more time to get to know these characters, specifically the ones that don't get a lot of screen time outside of the big fights. Hitsugaya is a prime example, where he gets character development during many of his big battles and we get an impression of who he is as a captain, but outside of that, you never really get an impression of who he is as a person. The episode that focuses on him just being a regular kid is really interesting and explores a side of him that the manga just never did. I am a firm believer in the idea that seeing what characters do in their off time can be a much better way to get to know them than the typical dramatic fight bullshit, and Bleach does this really well for pretty much the entire cast, especially in the anime. Dude, Bleach's aesthetic goes so fucking raw. Sometimes there's this like 2000 youth culture Y2K aesthetic to it, where it's very colorful and rebellious, and when the story gets more serious, Kubo opts for a good contrast of darks and lights. This is captured well in a lot of the anime openings, and it's kind of hard to describe, which is why you're seeing footage of it, obviously. Bleach has such a unique art style, but in some more subtle ways. Kubo has a particular way of drawing faces, and a lot of it is in the facial structure rather than the faces themselves. For example, characters like Orihime, Rukia, and Hitsugaya get slight redesigns after the time skip that are just noticeable enough to indicate that they're older, but not too drastic to where you don't recognize them anymore. Orihime's main design doesn't change, but her facial features are drawn much more defined, making her seem older. This is something I felt got lost in translation a bit with the anime, since a lot of the character designs are streamlined for it that you lose a bit of Kubo's personal flair. As for the manga though, the art is a lot more detailed than its contemporaries, with much more realistic proportions and again, facial structures. My only real criticism of this is that I have no fucking clue what's going on in half of these fights, because there will be a bunch of panels that show swords swinging, but you can't tell whose is whose and the perspective often changes completely, so it leaves you confused as to who just did what. I'm sure that the anime fixes this problem, or I'm just dumb and illiterate. Probably that.
I didn't know that I was gonna be talking to a bunch of illiterate people who don't know how to read.
At first, I thought Bleach was gonna be the most thematically generic of the big three, since it's rather generic in a lot of other respects, but it's actually much more complex than I was expecting. I was honestly expecting it to just be the power of friendship and all that classic shit, but was shocked to find out that it was also about these more abstract concepts like grief, honor, and your sense of self. We already discussed grief as a theme with Ichigo's character, so let's get into some of the other ones. One of the central themes of Bleach seems to be that of honor and what will drive people to forego what they view as honorable. This is first seen in the Soul Society arc, where many of the Gote 13 members, whose mission is to kill Ichigo and his friends, end up going against their orders out of some sense of honor. Each character's sense of duty is challenged when they find that their enemies aren't so different from them. Renji, Byakuya, and Ikaku end up liking and respecting Ichigo even though he is their enemy, and they end up letting him live even though that goes directly against their orders and, by extension, their honor as Shinigami. Uryu is a character driven by preserving his honor as a Quincy, which is ironically the very mindset that drives the Thousand-Year Blood War. While Uryu takes pride in his heritage to please his father and carry on the legacy he thought was lost, Yuak and the Stern Ritter take this pride to extreme heights, manifesting itself in displays of military force against those they believe have wronged them. Like, it ain't a coincidence that the group of genocidal racial purists all have German names and dress like Nazis.
It was a Jewish doctor.
Anyways, Uryu's view of Quincy pride is almost directly opposite to the Sternritter's view, even though they both come from the same place. Uryu comes to realize that there's no honor in preserving the Quincy way if it involves keeping things the same, and that he should try to improve what the Quincy stood for instead of following the rules blindly, which is what leads him to ignore his father's wishes and join up with Ichigo. The most interesting part of Uryu's relationship with Yuak is that Yuak represents everything wrong with the Quincy way, things that Uryu realized were a serious problem long ago. Uryu takes pride in upholding his own beliefs and representing a new generation of Quincy, which directly contrasts Yuak's view of Quincy pride being to wipe out all of Soul Society and keep things the way they've always been. Uryu saves the lives of those he still views to be enemies because his honor as a person conflicts with his honor as a Quincy, forcing himself to hold one over the other. Again, my guy is the antithesis. But if you want to talk about honor, Kenpachi Zaraki has to be part of that conversation. Not only is this dude one of the rawest motherfuckers of all time, his views on battle are incredibly interesting. He is arguably the strongest Shinigami in all of Seirete, and only ever fights for fun. He doesn't care about honor or any of that shit, he just lives for the thrill of battle and is eager for someone to give him a real fight, One Punch Man style. It's interesting that his motives for helping our heroes during the big main conflicts really has nothing to do with the good of Soul Society or the human realm. He just wants more people to fight and will even cut down his own men if they interfere with his fun. He lives for a good fight, as it is the sense of respect between two warriors of equal skill that makes them worth it. There is no honor in ganging up on an opponent or in fighting someone who you know you will defeat. And this is a large part of what makes Zaraki such a great character and why honor is such an interesting concept in Bleach.
He won't smoke, he won't smoke, he won't smoke, he won't smoke.
Something that Kubo does narratively that I think really sets Bleach apart from its contemporaries is that it doesn't really rely on flashbacks as much. The other two of the big three often go on these long diatribes to detail a character's backstory, dedicating multiple chapters or episodes to a flashback, which can often be to the detriment of the pacing, but Bleach doesn't really have this. There are flashbacks, but they often don't even take up a whole chapter on their own. When flashbacks are used, they're kept just brief enough to give the reader the necessary context while never detracting from what's going on in the present. By the time that there are longer multi-chapter flashbacks, it's already in the final arc, and it doesn't feel out of place because those flashbacks serve to answer long-time mysteries of the series that are also intertwined with the main conflict. Kind of a minor thing, but it does make a bit of a difference. Storytelling-wise though, Bleach is kind of all over the place. The first arc takes more of a slice-of-life approach to introducing its character, and apparently a lot of the anime's filler takes a similar approach, which is in stark contrast to the later arcs that are much more focused on the overarching conflict. But to get into this a little bit deeper, let's get into the tier list. Bleach tier list time, baby, let's go. So first up, of course, we have the first arc, the Agent of the Shinigami arc. This arc is notoriously very slice-of-lifey compared to the rest of the series, and honestly, I kind of like it. I like it as its own kind of vibe, and I like all the side stories they tell. It's very episodic. It genuinely does feel like an episode, like a fucking Danny Phantom type show, you know what I mean? Just like a kind of a monster of the week type thing. But they don't even shy away from like the darker moments, like when Ichigo kind of finds out about the hollow that killed his mother. It's got kind of all it wants there. And the series obviously takes a completely different direction, but I wouldn't really complain if this was the entire series. So we'll put this in a nice, comfortable A rank. I like the Agent of the Shinigami. Next is the Soul Society Sneak Entry arc, which is the first half of the Soul Society arc. A lot of these arcs are really long, so they kind of split them into sub-arcs, a lot kind of like what they do with One Piece, but a lot of people say this is one of the better arcs of Bleach, and I would be inclined to agree, because it's got some really great moments. It has, you know, Ichigo training and meeting his fucking Zanpakuto for the first time. It's the whole rescue to get to Rukia. Rukia's whole character arc in this arc is crazy. The only things I didn't really care for were kind of like the slower, the more slow moments where it's kind of clear that they were just trying to pad things out a little bit. But we do get introduced to a lot of really interesting things like Seirete, the Gotei 13, a lot of cool stuff in this one. I feel like it would be wrong to not put this in S tier. And honestly, the rescue arc is kind of the same. This is where a lot of Rukia's character development lies. We get a lot of really cool fights in this, and of course the reveal that Aizen was actually evil the whole time and is behind it all. It's wild. It's a great arc. Rescue arc, also S tier. S for suck my toes. S for soul sucking. That soul-sucking dick. Then we get to the Arrancar arc, which is a really fucking annoying thing to say, the Arrancar arc. But the first part of the Arrancar arc is the Arrival arc, which is where the Espadas and the Arrancars come in to the human realm for the first time, and it's pretty cool. It kind of gives us an idea of what the Arrancars are like and what the Espadas are going to be like. We get some cool fights between with Hitsugaya and some other characters. It's a fun one. It's again, it's very much a setup kind of arc, which is fine. It works for what it is. And that's pretty fucking PogChamp. We'll put it in A if I could find it. We'll put it in A. It's a nice one.
That was a nice one. Okay.
Yeah. Then we have the Hueco Mundo Sneak Entry arc, which is where the group goes to Hueco Mundo in order to save Orihime. I honestly think this is one of the better arcs of the entire series, if I'm being completely honest. In fact, I might even move the Arrival arc down to B, just so I could put the Sneak Entry up in A. It's just character-wise one of the best arcs. Get a lot of cool fights in it again as well. It's a little bit sexual, I won't lie to you. That was fucking gay. The next two arcs are kind of one and the same, and that's the Arrancar Fierce Fight arc and the Arrancar vs. Shinigami arc. They're basically the exact same arc, just kind of split apart arbitrarily for really no reason. But these are basically the same thing. It's just the Gotei 13 fighting the Arrancars and the Espadas, and a lot of these fights are pretty good. I like when the Captain Commander comes in and fucks shit up. He's like, "You're all pussies. You're all weak. Suck my fucking old dick." And then of course you have some of the good shit, right? You got the good shit like Ichigo versus Ulquiorra, one of the best fights, and of course the conclusion of the entire Arrancar arc and the entire first half of the series with Ichigo versus Aizen. It's fucking nutty. It's a good one. These are both basically the same arc, so I'm going to put them in the same thing. But I think I genuinely might put them both in... Actually, there's 4 more arcs in this fucking arc. What the hell? Whatever. They're all going in... Some of them are going to go to A, and some of them are going to fucking S. I don't even care. There you go. Those are all going to go in S. Suck my fucking ass. The Past arc is the next one, and honestly, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't even remember what the fuck happened in this goddamn arc. And I'm not saying it's a bad arc either. Technically, it's right in the middle of the Arrancar arc, so I don't really know why I I skipped it, but it's kind of a whatever arc to me. I legitimately don't remember what happened in it, which is, it's fine. We didn't really need it though, is my real thing. So I'm gonna put it in B. The second to last arc is the Fullbring arc, or the Lost Substitute Shinigami arc, which is the arc where Ichigo tries to regain his powers after losing them at the end of the last arc, and he does so by obtaining his Fullbring, which is another fucking power that they introduced that I don't think ever gets introduced again. A lot of fans really don't like this arc, specifically because it's kind of fillery even in the manga, and in the anime, this is the last arc in the anime until Thousand Year Blood War came out, so it kind of left a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouth, knowing that this was kind of the last arc they would have for the anime. I think it's not that bad. I like there's some good character moments in it that I really like between Ichigo and Chad, and I really like the whole premise, the whole reveal at the end of the arc, that this was just fucking a gaslight gatekeep girl boss the arc. Motherfucking, I personally like to call this the gaslight arc because fucking Titty Man over here, whatever his name is, just gaslights everybody into thinking they were like friends the whole time, and it's fucking insane. It's wild. I love that shit. I love it when gaslighting is used in a show like that, but otherwise it was kind of inconsequential. It kind of served as an arc just to kind of give an excuse for why Ichigo has his powers again for the last arc, which, might I say, is some good shit. So we'll put the Fullbring arc in B, just because it's not that good, but it's pretty decent. And last but not least, we have the 1000 Year Blood War arc. Now this is probably this is without a doubt, I think, the best arc in all of Bleach, probably. I think it's a controversial statement, but I'm gonna fucking say it. I'm gonna live by that. I'm gonna die on this hill. The anime hasn't come out yet as I'm recording this, but I'm hoping that the anime can fix a few of the problems with this arc, because this arc has a lot of like really weird pacing issues and just strange, abrupt things that happen in it with absolutely zero explanation. I've read a bit online about why this arc came out the way that it did, and apparently Kubo was dealing with some serious health issues at the time that kind of impeded his ability to write. So about like 150 some odd chapters were just completely cut so he could fucking, finish the thing. And I think that's a little bit unfortunate. It could have been really cool to see some of these stories expanded on, because a lot of the times this arc will just like, You'll be in the middle of a fight, and it'll be right at the climax of that fight. You're like, oh shit, yes, I want to see this. And then it just, like, the next chapter is like just something completely different. You're like, what the fuck? And they typically do eventually cut back to it, but it's kind of like, it's just really weirdly paced. There's just a lot of shit that happens, and you don't know why it happens. There's never any explanation. Characters just show up in locations despite being in a fight a couple chapters up before. It's really weird, but I feel like having those extra chapters could have fixed a lot of these pacing issues, and I hope that the anime can add some additional scenes and add in some of these lost chapters, if you will, and put them into the anime and make it flow a little bit better. It's pretty cool. A lot of cool fights, a lot of cool shit going on. It's pretty epic. We're gonna put the 1000 Year Blood War confidently in S tier, even though it does have a lot of its problems that I'm hoping the anime is going to fix. But that's it for the tier list. I have a sword still. I'm going to sword you to death. Back to the video. Here's the gay-ass conclusion. Fuck you.
Oh, I needed a break, so I came here to buy more blech. It's pronounced Bleach, aisle 1.
As far as the big three goes, Bleach is definitely the odd one out. While One Piece and Naruto were a lot more in line with your typical view of what the genre entails, Bleach just kinda has a different vibe, and I kinda didn't like it at first. I still enjoyed it, but it kinda lacked that same spark that One Piece and Naruto had. For example, I started writing the One Piece section of this video when I finished Arlong Park, and I started the Naruto section sometime after the Sasuke recovery mission, because those were the arcs that clicked with me and inspired me to get my thoughts across. I can't think of a moment during the story where Bleach did that for me, and it did eventually click with me. I just had to finish it and let it sit for a while before that could happen. With that being said, I think Bleach is definitely the smartest of the big three, if that makes sense. Barring the slice of life moments that make up much of the first arc, the series matures a great deal as it goes on. While the same can certainly be said about One Piece and Naruto, Kubo seems to write Bleach with a level of maturity that I don't think other manga of its style quite have. Like, the volume releases of the manga all start with these poems about various abstract topics, which you wouldn't quite expect of anything shonen. Big fights aren't really the focus like they are in other series, but that doesn't really matter when the characters and themes are much more important. It's a lot less in your face than its contemporaries, it's way more subtle, and as a result, I think it's a lot more interesting of a read or a watch in that it takes a little bit more brain power to dissect. It doesn't fall victim to a lot of the tropes of other battle shonen series because it's not really written to be one. It's a story and a character study first, a shonen action series second. Bleach is such a complex series that I genuinely struggled to do it justice in this video because there's just so much going on that it's impossible to really talk about all of it in explicit detail. Like Like I said, it took a while for Bleach to really click with me, but once it did, I gained a new respect for it that I never really expected to have. I will talk about this again shortly, but I think it's utterly insane how people always try to artificially kick Bleach out of the big three just because it's too different from the other two, when it's that very difference that let it make its mark in the first place. The series deserves way more respect than people give it, and I can only hope that the upcoming anime adaptation of the 1000-Year Blood War will help people to see that. If you ever need a new series to binge, I'm certain that this one will bleach your soul.
折れた淡い翼君は少し青すぎる空に疲れただけさもう誰かのためじゃなくて自分のために笑っていいよ依然とした忍びる孤独内側に止まるろうそく右は奪にこう悲しんだりあとは裏腹に足りない言葉のくぼみの何で埋めたらいいんだろうもうわからないよせめて夢の中で自由に泳げたらな空もいらないのに昨日までのことを振り潰さなくても明日に向かうのに折れた淡い翼君は少し青すぎる空に疲れただけさもう誰かのためじゃなくて自分のために笑っていいよ
What up, bitch? It's me, your boy, the real Shinigami MattCMG with my big effing blade here. Here's another ad break for you. Same advertisements apply. Give me money. Oh, Getsuga Tensho! My bankai is that I summon a little small man. A small little feller. A small little character, I'd even wager. I'd even consider him a small little guy. My bankai is that I summon a small homunculus to crawl up your ass and fuck you. I recently made a tweet about why Alone's is the best Bleach opening. And if you say anything otherwise, you're simply just wrong. Motherfuckers be like, Veronica is the best Bleach opening. How about you fucking Volan your way into some cock, you dumb bitch? Asterisk goes hard? I'm a little bit hard from watching it, actually. You're kind of correct on that one. Anyways, here's the next part of the video. I'm gonna waste more of your time now. Getsuga Tensho!
Bleach is holding strong at midnight, followed by uncut Naruto at 12:30.
Believe it!
Then it's all new episodes of One Piece at 1.
That's a mighty lineup if I've ever seen one!
It's a 6-hour challenge. Here we come.
And that's what I'm made for.
Tsunami. Saturday from midnight to 6 a.m. on Adult Swim.
Today we have looked at the big three of Shonen. One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, three of the most popular and genre-defining works of fiction to come out of the land of the rising sun. But are they deserving of that title? Short answer to that pretentious question, yes. Long answer, look at the timestamp on this video. You know, I've seen a lot of discussion regarding which series should, like, replace another in the big three. You know, like, this anime is goated, it should replace Bleach in the big three. Or people who just straight up don't know what the big three actually is. These people seem to completely misunderstand why the big three is the way that it is. The big three aren't the big three because they're necessarily the best written. They're the big three because they represent a very specific transitional period for Weekly Shonen Jump and anime and manga as a whole. At the time when these three were all running simultaneously, they completely overshadowed every other series out there. This doesn't mean that they necessarily sold more, but the popularity and influence that each of these series held was unmatched. When you think of anime and manga from the early 2000s, these are always the ones that come to mind without fail, because they were that prolific. You might also think of Hunter x Hunter, Death Note, Yu-Gi-Oh, or others of the time, but the big three are always at the top of that list. The early 2000s were also a time when anime was taking its first steps to becoming mainstream in the West, so these were also some of the first anime to gain worldwide appeal, something that wasn't really a huge factor for older series. series with a few exceptions. The significance and influence that these 3 series hold will simply never be topped, and this idea that there is a new big 3 or that a newer series can dethrone another in the big 3 is completely missing the point. There can never be a new gen big 3 because not only are there so many shonen series out there right now that it's become impossible for just 3 of them to somehow become bigger than the others, but also that anime and manga is already a mainstream worldwide phenomena, so those borders have already been transcended long ago. By who? By the big 3. And technically Dragon Ball, but that's a different story. It also makes sense why these works are so popular among young boys and men, because they're all about youthful exuberance and not letting go of the hope that we all have within. It makes sense that in a culture like Japan's, where young men are expected to work for their entire lives with an extremely rigid and unforgiving working environment, that young men would gravitate towards works that encourage them to follow their dreams, no matter how out there they might be. And I can also see how that's applicable to us in the West.
He's just like me. He's just like me for real!
In cultures like this, where you're expected to just be another cog in the machine, it's refreshing and inspiring to have a series that encourages people to live their lives for themselves. In a world where we often feel we are powerless to change anything, series like these latch onto that hope for a better tomorrow through power fantasies, friendship and camaraderie, and the prospect of a more free world. These works inspire hope in all of us in various ways, and that's the prime reason that they stand the test of time. Which is why I think it's kind of annoying when I hear people degrade shonen as a genre for being formulaic, or when others gas these series up way too much because they're hype. Both ends of this spectrum treat these series as if they're just fights and screaming and nothing more, when that couldn't be further from the truth. The big 3 have great writing, world building, themes, music, and all kinds of fantastic and thought-provoking stuff, but when people shit on shonen as a genre by mocking the tropes or going on about plot holes or what have you, or when they treat them like the second coming of Christ because of a fight with good Sakuga, they completely miss the point of why these series exist. Oda, Kishimoto, Kubo, and pretty much every other shonen mangaka don't write these stories to have strict consistency or any of that shit. They write them to make the audience feel what they feel. If there's one thing that you take away from this excessively long video, it should be this. It doesn't matter if these shows don't always have the best writing or character development or any of that shit, because you don't watch shonen with your brain. You watch it with your heart. On a more personal note, regardless of my larger criticisms of these 3 series, I'll always be fond of them because the majority of my 2022 was basically dedicated to them, so they'll probably always remind me of this time. The week that I started my last semester of college was when I first started Naruto, and I was getting really into One Piece. The day that I graduated college was the day I started Bleach, and I started getting really into it in the second half of Naruto as I was starting my first real job. The promise that I made to doing this video was something that kept me dedicated to this YouTube channel, since at the time it wasn't really doing so hot, but it was also that these 3 series kept me in a constant state of believing in myself and my dreams, as all shonen tends to do. If not for these series resonating with me and inspiring me in the ways that they did, I don't think that you'd be watching this video right now because it probably wouldn't exist right now. One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach are the big 3, and they always will be, and they've certainly become some of my new favorite series out there. I've been MattCMG, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Hurry up and let me ride it!
Ise no seで踏み込む五輪僕らは何もまだ知らぬ一線越えて振り返るともない僕らは何もまだ知らぬ歌ってくきらめく汗がこぼれるのさ覚えてないこともたくさんあっただろう誰も彼もシルエット大事にしたいもの持って大人になるんだどんな時も離さずに守り続けようそしたらいつの日にか何もかも割れるさ開いと待ってるこの葉が飛んでゆく
Ichigo Kurosaki Getsuga Tenshuing his cock into Naruto Uzumaki's tight little boy hole while Luffy jacks his fucking cock piece off. Alright, we've peaked, I think. We've comedically peaked.